You're going live! Yay, it's working! Yay! That's bloody good news. Use a wrench. Yay! Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Right. Oh. Hello everyone, can you all hear me? That's the first question. That's the first thing I need to ask. Hello everyone. Right, if I put that like that, then I can see, and I've got the chat in front of me. Although when I say I've got the chat in front of me, I should admit, okay, I was trying to get the desk out and trying to get everything set up, and I haven't quite managed it. So, I do apologise. What I have instead done is, you see there's a computer sat there, the books are there, the painting's all been done. I think I'm going to need more carpet tiles. And there's the computer. So, it's a little bit ramshackle. It's not quite fully in, but the painting is being done to my satisfaction. So, yeah. It's fun. It is fun. The brew shack is looking good. I have to say, these carpet tiles are an absolute revelation. They're very quick and easy to put together. But I am going to need more. I thought 36 would be enough because they're 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. I think I did my maths wrong because I think I was using. Well, let's put it this way: the area I was covering, I'm about half the area I needed. So I think I'm going to need to buy more, but we'll leave that to one side. Hello, everyone. Hello, Rob Smith. Hello, Abazaski. Calvin Gosbeck. Hello, Santa Clear. And actually, want to remember, thank you, everyone, because this would certainly not be possible without all of you. Trust me, it really wouldn't. Yeah, university. We won't get into university income streams, but hey, hello, Santa Canera. Hello, Cosmos. Ooh, Santa Canera. I'm started playing Assassin's Creed 4 again, so I might have some Age of Sail 17 to 10 to 17 questions. Good. We always like those questions. My dad loved those questions. He used to spend a lot of time wandering around Chatham Dockyard and trying to pretend to be there, and pretending that he was there in the Age of Sail. Howdy, everyone. Another Wolf. Hello. I'll try and listen in, but I've got some photography work to do. Wish me luck as I'm 2.5 weeks in a minimum 2-month recovery for a triple fractured ankle, and it's outdoors on grass and gravel. Oh, good lord, you good luck. It's been warm today in the UK. Yeah, good luck. Hi, Mark. Hi, Sage. Hi, Georgia Newman. How did you 40? Sorry again about being so late. I was frantically trying to get everything to work and actually set up, and it didn't work, and then I had to reorganize things to sort it out and make it work. Hi, Steve Richards. Hi, Frank Salvo. Hello, Stafford Thompson. No, Seneca, I wasn't MIA. I was. I did put a picture up on the community section. Fashionably late. Yes, I go that. Hello, John. Hi, Sykes. Hello, George Newman. Thanks, Dotsie. Could you briefly clarify what happened to HMS Manchester during Operation Pedestal? Why the controversy? It's a debate over whether or not she should have been where she was and what she actually got hit with, and it's all the usual debates. With the thing with HMS Manchester, the reason I'm not going into too much detail about it is I was actually considering doing the full British cruises in the Mediterranean video as part of my Christmas specials. So I'm going to keep quiet on that one to extent. Let's give them the academic 15 minutes. Well, I think I managed to do the academic 20 minutes. Laptop hasn't melted down, although I might need to open the door. Currently, I have it closed, mainly from the perspective of there is still paint drying behind me. and I don't want a fluffy friend to turn a different color. Actually, it's turned out to be quite cool, this shed. Still is. Although, I have to admit, I think the carpet might change that a bit. The carpet tiles are very, very good. I have a feeling also that my sister's going to end up getting the same carpet tiles as me. I could seriously. There are two brands which I would happily be brand spokesman for. One of them, of course, is Iron Brew. The other one is these carpet tiles. They're frankly fantastic. Hello, everyone. Right then. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Stafford, you did have a chat with me a good half hour ago, and I had been okay. I thought everything was going to time, and then everything promptly fell apart. Oh. They found me already? Is this because I'm suddenly getting popular on the YouTube Shorts? Report. Pornography. Report. Okay, thank you. Bye bye. Thank you, Sean Mac. McDonald's for lunch. McDonald's for lunch and tea at the moment. I haven't had food yet today. What are you doing, Stem? Hello, everyone. Yes, 5:05 now, and the office is looking amazing. I'm glad it's looking good. It is. I have to admit, this is not all my work. Yesterday, I had a very special pair of builders come. They're called the Drakenfell crew, and one got here before the other, but they worked really hard while they were here, and they fed me, so they were really, really lovely. Hello, Matthias Slavic. Hello, Ian Stradling. Brew coloured shack. Yes, it is the brew coloured shack. Nice ignorant. If the Greeks had gotten the French battleship they'd ordered, how they'd use her? Probably to start an arms race with the Turkish, Turkish. Yeah, at that point, yes, and it would more than likely have led to some very interesting scenarios vis-a-vis the how do I put this politely, the international treaty limitations, because it might have ended up being necessary to include not just them involved as well as the South American powers, because once you start going down to that smaller, you've got to start including them, you've got to start including Russia, etc., in the treaty to make the treaty work, and that's going to have an escalatory effect on numbers. Hello, Redgolf. Hello to Ireland. Hi, Colin Cameron. Hello, everyone. Right then. Lions, I hope that your big fluffs are doing okay. They're doing well. We have, this is going to sound strange, neckerchiefs for them, which you can put in the fridge and into the freezer for various levels of cool. You put water on them and you stick them in either the fridge or the freezer, and they get very nice and cool, and then you stick them. Where are the books? The books are down here on the carpet. I have the books. Oh. Right. Sean, did you forget to check your six? I'm sure Sean didn't. I'm sure he checked his six. Seneca, the main character ship in AC4 is a brig Pierce of 36 guns, 40 include chasers. How realistic is that? She was described as an old brig in the 1715. That would not be a brig. If it's got that many guns, it's not a brig. It's a frigate. A brig would be 18 guns or less. Maybe if they're very lucky, 24. But 18 guns or less. The moment you're into 36, 40 guns, you're into, well, you're heading up to sort of fifth. You're well into fifth rate territory. So you're definitely frigate. Let's see. If torpedoes were first developed in 1821 and truly became effective ship killers by 1850, how many warships developed from there? Expect ships to have to try and get faster, so you might see things like the turbine come in sooner. But also expect ships to develop double hulls and ships to have enhanced torpedo defenses earlier. But most importantly, it's going to be rapid firing guns. That was the counter to the torpedo boat. Until you had the submarine, the best counter to a torpedo was to take out the torpedo boat, and the best way to take out the torpedo boat was rapid firing guns because they could outrange the torpedoes. And the more effective the torpedoes become, the more effort they put into making rapid firing guns longer and quicker and better. John Barrow, would the Iron like the Northampton cruisers, class cruisers? No, they wouldn't fit the Royal Navy doesn't need them. It's going to sound strange. For the US Navy, they needed them for scout cruiser roles because they needed those sort of vessels. The Royal Navy at this period, when the Americans are building Northamptons, already has carriers in service and has battle cruisers. So the roles of those cruisers are very different. Yes, and to an extent, the county class as well. The county class are not as good in the scout role as the Northamptons, but they're good enough in fitting with their other roles, which they're more primary for. Which, to be honest, let's be with county class cruisers is commerce warfare. Now, was there more than cost that killed the Spanish plan to convert the Hulk of Trieste into a light aircraft carrier post World War II? Yeah, it wasn't considered that good a hull for that for the role. It was considered a good hull for a cruiser, but not a good hull for that. What helpers would also feed their foreman? No wonder it's so hot there. Yes, they are very good. They're lovely. Was there more, Dr. C? Will you recognise your books now? Or reorganise your books now? Yes, because there are going to be the shelves in down there, and also the fridge is no longer going to be underneath there in the box. The fridge is now out. This is the important thing. The fridge is now out and is sitting there, and there are going to be pictures up, and there's going to be one of my model railways is going to be set up on here and slowly built behind me. It's going to be interesting because it's going to be to give interest to all of you, specifically when you're watching it. Is it's going to be designed so it's got spaces I can put other models onto the railway, and then I'm going to see if people spot them on the railway. For example, did you get any good pictures of Hyder, and can you show us where you think they stored the extra torpedoes? I've got lots of good pictures of her. I am putting together a video that's going to be part of the video. Because I had a long conversation with several people who'd served on Hyder at various points, and they had some interesting stories which certainly seemed to confirm a lot of what I thought about where they'd stored them. Good evening to sunny Berlin. Would you agree that President Carter canning the B1A is not a good reason for selling a full set of design plans and flight data to the British? The British would consider it a good reason for it. What's the temperature? No idea, but the window is fully open. The office is looking almost as good as beard. Thank you. No, I have to say, the reason I got this carpet, and it's going to, for those of you who are dog owners, you're going to know what I mean with this. The wooden floor is lovely, but it had been full of potted holes. So I needed to do something to protect it, and I decided to put down the layer of the floor ceiling leveling concrete in the end because that was the only way to properly look after it because of the damage that had been done by the builders. And as a result, when I put down the concrete, I knew that my dogs would love to lie on it, but would not actually be that good with it. In that report, as thank you, Stafford. You got those last ones. I knew that my dogs would end up hurting themselves lying on the concrete because dogs lying on concrete tend to start to, how do I put this, hurt, especially certain breeds of dogs, corgis, poodles, both of them, are not good lying on concrete for long periods of time. So they hurt their fur, but more importantly, they can end up hurting themselves and actually damaging their skin. So putting down a carpet seemed to be the most sensible thing because it meant the dogs would be safe and would be protected. Is the English Electric Canberra unsuitable for all-weather interceptor, AEW, and carrier ops. Yes. Interceptor and carrier ops, definitely. AEW, it probably could have been adapted for, but it really wasn't designed for those roles. Just thanks. I thought I was the only one done into railroads and naval ships. Nope, there will be an N-gauge railway appearing behind me because this is the perfect size for an N-gauge railway. I'm sorry, it's not really big enough for a decent-sized HO gauge one. Oh, and definitely not for an O gauge. It would just be a shuttle backwards and forwards O gauge line. But for N gauge, I'm hoping to do a sort of a sort of figure of eight scenario in that it'll go over and it'll be a double loop. It'll be a twin track double loop with a loop set inside the other loop, with it rising over and sort of going behind it on a higher level. I said, how long would the Rex Zara need to be repaired? The Iron captured her. Oh, a good few months. Probably years. Depends how desperate they were for her. I'm trying to borrow. Would you think the RM would like Northampton class cruisers? Possibly they do like high speed things, but there again, they're not really fast enough for them. So it's kind of a case of they are good. Look, the thing is, they would probably use them if they had them, but they wouldn't be what they build because they don't fit them as well as the ones they build fit their criteria, although the Royal Ranger Marina change their criteria every 5 minutes. The thing is, that's what happens, and it's a good thing about that with ships. It's one of the interesting things about them. Tell me, how many 104 guns of ships line were running around the Caribbean in 1710 and 1720s? Because the 104 gun of ships line is the standard model for what in game is called a man of war. Which game is that, Seneca? Because honestly, 104 guns are first rate. So let's be honest, in that period, the Royal Navy had about 6 or 7 first rates, and I don't know if they had them in the 1710s and 1720s. Probably, yeah. If they did have any, it'd be about 6 or 7, and about the same number of second rates, honestly. Although they preferred first rates to second rates. This is the thing. The Royal Navy didn't actually like the second rate as a concept and as a ship. That's probably where our dejection for the word second rate comes from. They like third rates and they like first rates. I see. How do you figure get up so badly that Matrix Fidelity gets sunk? Oh, so many ways. So many ways. Seneca, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Yeah, no. I'm sorry, but in reality, there were not that many of those running around. Oh! I have a drink of some sort in here. Now, before anyone thinks I'm getting anti-Iron Brew, I have a current agreement with my family. Before I get onto the Iron Brew, I have to drink whatever drink they ordered from McDonald's. Because apparently this has actual water in it, and they're worried that I've been surviving off Iron Brew alone. I have no idea what that is, but it tastes okay. You have I have 15 first rates in my pirate loot fleet. You have more first rates than the entire Royal Navy ever had, really. Like I said, would the Mars Monitor be a terrible choice for an AEW platform? It's potentially big enough, but it would be... It's quite difficult to make an AEW platform. You need a combination of endurance, ability to carry a heavy load, take off and land in an incredibly short distance, and possibly, most importantly, and I say this is possibly the most important, oh, they got me a Big Mac. More importantly, please let me chicken nuggets. Yay, chicken nuggets! Please tell me there's barbecue sauce in here. that barbecue sauce? No barbecue sauce. Cruelty. Oh well. Thank you, Stafford. So AEW is a real mixture of criteria. It's actually more difficult to build an AEW aircraft than pretty much anything else. And honestly, the British cheat when they go for a helicopter AEW. Because the helicopter AEW, helicopter by its very nature, can carry heavy loads as a rule, because they're designed for it. Has a wide body, so space for crew, personnel, etc. in it. And has the ability to land and take off in a short distance. It's a helicopter. Frank's Honor, without help, Italy versus France. Depends when you're talking about it. Early 1930s, I'd probably give it to Italy. By about the time the Dunkirks come into service, though, I'd say it's a draw. It's going to depend on the performance of the admirals, in which case probably the French, because I'd reckon, well, hang on now, the French admirals aren't that much better than the Italian ones. Okay, whichever one manages to find the least worst admiral is probably going to win it in the late 1930s. Nice 684. How daft is the idea of supersonic bomber based on Concorde? Very daft once you realise the exact framing of the airframe. How likely is it that the British Imperial Federation of UK, Canada, India, and Australia, I'm presuming this is from an alternate timeline, would have more ships than each nation does in our timeline? Very likely, because you have economies of scale. That's the point. You'd have economies of scale. You'd only have to pay for one design. You'd only have to pay for one training, one academy, one this, one that. First time around, good evening. If it comes to rated ships, is third rate really appropriate for the Tonai class? Their broadside weight would exceed those of most second and some first rates. It's based on the piercing of the how many points they're pierced for in guns. It's not based on the weight of the guns. And you have to realise the British at some point were going, economy, we can build a more 18-pounder guns than anything, so we'll put some more. We'll put ships into battle which are entirely 18-pounder guns only. And you go, that's really not actually that sensible. And frankly, they learned that it was not sensible at one point. So now it's GO3. I was being curious about how World War I and a potential Jutland scenario could have changed if the High Seas Fleet been able to execute its doctrine, dog a bank, or any other potential clash, I presume, and destroy a significant portion. If they do destroy the battlecruiser squadron, the British would get other ships to fulfill the battlecruiser role in terms of the scouting duties because they have other battlecruisers around. B, you probably stop having the battlecruiser force acting as a separate force. And C, you might well find certain ships get completed a lot quicker. I.e., instead of sitting around to make changes on designs, they'll put a rush on certain capital ships units. So if you lose an entire battlecruiser force, it will most likely be blamed on German nefariousness, whilst publicly, while secretly being blamed on BT. Could be publicly blamed on BT, but they'll be worried it's the ships. So yeah, it does mean the Germans would have the fast force going into the faster force going into Jutland, but then at Jutland they will be facing Jellicoe, and Jellicoe is not the type who makes mistakes. He doesn't always make the right call, but in terms of what you would like him to do to kill the enemy, but he doesn't make mistakes that lose his fleet. And he's still not going to do that with or without BT being there. The only difference is that without BT being there, there is probably not, especially if they've lost a disparate element, there's probably not a broken off element. So probably the entire Grand Fleet is moving as one, which means you do not have the run to the north and run to the south and run to the north. You have the whole scenario where you have the entire Grand Fleet coming up en masse, which would mean they'd all be under control of Jellicoe, which could mean, well, also possibly wouldn't have battle cruisers in the van because he had the 5th Battle Squadron in the van. So probably wouldn't lose the eyes because they wouldn't be in the position they were in the battle. And therefore, it would possibly lead to actually a better outcome from Jutland for the British. Good luck with your sprain, Georgian. And ironically, it's similar endurance to Hawkeye. Yes, it does, ironically, which caused the Americans no end of frustration when they found that one out. Sure, Mike, do you think the French Expedition to Ireland could have worked? Which one? It was always an idea for the French, but the trouble is the French were never able to really sustain any supplies. So yeah, they could send some troops out there, but A, they'd tend to find a garrison. B, they'd find an island which wasn't as united as they thought it would be. Because even some of the Catholic lords, who the French presumed to be happy to side with them, preferred the British over the French. Especially once French became Republican. Frank Simon, don't see. Did your dad ever work with aircrafts, or at least how to fit them on a ship? What do you think of the Invincible class? He worked on the Invincible class. He worked on the Queen Elizabeth class. He worked on HMS Ocean. Queen Elizabeth class. He was part of the team. I know he worked on the flight deck for her and did some drawings for that. And I know he did some drawings of the hangar and the lift arrangements. So yeah, a lot. And yes, what did he think of the Invincible class? He wished they'd been about. He reckoned they needed to be 5 to 10,000 tons bigger. Restaurant, Clarke, have airliners replaced the ocean line in terms of industrial prestige? I'm thinking of the wars over the 747 Concorde and A380. Yes and no. Certainly the airline companies would like you to believe so. That's it. If the British build the V bombers, would they build a Tupolev 295 type aircraft? And what would make them do that? In the Empire's twilight history, the de Havilland Vengeance was built as a fallback if the V bombers didn't meet expectations. Probably if they wanted a long range endurance aircraft for some reason. Seriously, were they wrong in getting rid of the Nimrods? Considering their capability that was ready to go, it's annoying, and it would have been useful to have maintained. But honestly, I wish instead of doing the Nimrod MR4, they'd actually just paid into the P8 program from the beginning and got more of those than we're getting. He's trying. Governments often have bright ideas about using aircraft, civilian aircraft, for military purposes. Carrying bombs and dropping them is a lot different to carrying people and dropping them from the sky. Yes. That wouldn't surprise me, Night Security for Let's be honest, the 295 has outlived many, many aircraft. Gang Aronson, all the battlecruisers are forced to be replaced with 5th Battle Squadron. No, because you see, if a force has been eliminated on its own, this is the thing. If you have a squadron, and hello, guy, because I'm not sure if I remember to say hello when you first message from me. If a force has been defeated in detail by being on its own, then Jellicoe's first appointment is going to go, well, I was right when I said you shouldn't attach a force from me, and we now can't. Basically, he'd used the shock of the loss of such a force to give him control of everything. No, certainly. If the Blackburn P138B had been built, would she still be in service today? And would the Royal Navy call her the Guardian? I have no idea what they call her, possibly the Guardian. Would she still be in service today? Potentially, or potentially would have gone with Hawkeye by now. Interesting enough, I always thought if we kept Cadabar carriers, we could have ended up actually having 3 in service, especially after the Falklands War, because it's actually easier to maintain 3 Cadabar carriers than it is to maintain 2. Because you ideally need to maintain at least 3 air wings anyway, so you might as well have 3 carriers. Dick Richards, the morale of Nelson's crew as they took those 2 Spanish first rates with his storming party must have been to the point where they could have literally accomplished anything. It was fairly high. Tobias Geoffrey, a loss makes necessary the chain is to win a big alternate as an alternate Jutland. I thought so. It seems like everyone does better from defeat than victory, especially the British. The British are obsessed with learning from defeat. I'm going to skip on the General McCullough one, mainly because he's a general and I can skip it. I can use the Navy and get me out of it. Andrew Cox, if the battlecruiser are destroyed, does Hipper just run into 5th Battle Squadron? Quite potentially at the front of the Grand Fleet. Which would not be fun. Sure, the 1796 one I asked because I'm going to be playing through a version of it as a war game. Good luck. Sounds like you've got a lot of first rates to deal with. Why did the Greeks choose the French Bretagne class when the British had several designs argued better than Bretagne? The French were offering them at a cheaper rate by subsidizing it up the wazoo. Hey, Shimmy. Okay, I'm then going to do Mauve Melanie and Guy's comment here. 295 and B-52 about last many. B-52 will most likely be refitted with warp engines and serve with the United Federation of Planets in 200 years' time. I would not be surprised. Andrew Cox, useless fact for today. The Tu-95 has the same fuselage stamina as the Tu-4, which was the Russian B-29 copy. Yes. Hi, Siren. How plausible is the idea that the British operate a shorts licensed version of the Japanese Shinmei PS1? And if they did, will they buy the Shinmei US2 on the license to replace it? Probably unlikely. There would need to be a very big change in the thought process for them to do so. A friend who used to supply food to the shipyard where Queen was built described it as the largest lavatory he had ever been on. Is it common for this sort of thing to happen on ships under construction? Yep. There's all sorts of weird things go on a ship under construction, and all sorts of weird smells. All sorts of really weird smells. There's actually a current debate going on, started by a article today in the Telegraph, on the QEs and their value. It's a pointless debate. It's a pointless debate because we're not going to go back and change now. And actually, there's more sensible options, and actually having this debate distracts from the sensible options we could pursue. Not 92. I remember the trouble they had updating existing numerals. Every airframe is special, requiring an enormous amount of extra maintenance, manual work fitting parts. Yep. That's interesting. 60-second question. Sure, Stafford? Sure, Mac. He would also have had the leverage of "I told you so" and could go to the press if Navy continued to not listen to him. Yeah. If the RAF, for Jellicoe, that would certainly be true. If the RAF showed up an American carrier of B-1B large, so equivalent on US independence, how big of an embarrassment would that be? Massive, but that's gone completely out of history. So, what is the most common bird pet that we found on our own ships? Probably a parrot, but it was actually quite rare to find birds as pets. Although budgies were quite common in one period. Depends what period you're talking about. There were parrots and budgies. But and I think one admiral did like to have a cockatoo, or a cockatiel. Is it a cockatoo or a cockatiel? Cockatiel. Seeing as the Chinese Civil War was mostly fought on land, I think how it doesn't matter really if the Chinese lost 38 of their shipyards. First, let's see. Did your dad have any opinions on how the battlecruiser should be used? He had all sorts of weird drawings which he'd done of theoretical ships, including a few battle cruisers, but they were sort of based around the Nelson Rodney time, so they were post World War I experience. And he did like to look at those. I was wondering, why is the Vanguard Alliance seems a bit built that seems a better option being kept if money was available post World War II? Because they would have been less used by war, so they'd be have more usable life. And now much more modern. Why was there never an SMS Prince Rupert? Honestly, have no idea on that one. I'm not really sure about that one. I'd have to Google that. And so, did your dad enjoy travel as much as you did? Yeah, he did. Reinforced containers can easily turn into space for a landing pad and can be rearranged to secrecy quite well. Modern day, in modern conflict, how good would the idea be to retrofit seize enemy container ships and repurpose them into carriers or airframes like the F-35? Look, the fact it's been done in the Falklands War, purely for taking off though, shows it's got some viability. But it's not as capable as a full up Pratt carrier. It's not. So it's a case of what scenario is this the thing for, the answer for? And how bad is the situation in that you're looking at as a scenario? Guy Anderson, I have not facepalmed so hard in a long time. Oh, it's pathetic. Rather be in having debate on replacing Alvin and Bullock with like a pair of Canberras. A pair of Trieste class, and we've got a deal. And then you'd have a lot of ships which could take. Well, you'd have 4 flight decks which could operate F-35s, 2 strike-orientated flight decks, 2 amphibious operators for flight decks. So you'd usually have 2 available. If you could stretch to have a third Trieste style LHD, then you could always guarantee 2 flight decks available. So 1 for amphibious operations and 1 for strike air defense roles. Nice. What character design did annoy your dad the most? He had problems with the Enterprise, but that was mainly because they used 8 nuclear reactors, and he felt that was excessive. So, anyway, what would he think of my idea of magnetic arresting rails? Probably would like to test it out, knowing him. Right. I've had some food. I know I haven't had the Big Mac, but I have got some of his books. And he would have been, let's see, 88 this year, believe it or not. 88. And this is the transactions of the Institute of Naval Architects from 1934, which is the year he was born. Well, now, do we think the Doctor is belt feeding or inhaling the chicken nuggets? Inhaling. Please, I inhale. Chris Ryan, that's luck. Would the armor on a modern battleship take the form of an overwhelming number of soft and hard cannon missile systems backed up by enough armor to stop modern deck guns? It would depend on the systems that were being built to attack them. It's going to sound strange, but if you're building vessels, missiles the size of the shipwreck missile system which the Russians were building, then you are probably looking at something different. If you're still dealing with harpoon caliber style missiles, then yeah, probably you can go that way. Does he enjoy the travel as much as you do? Yes, he helped me with some of the initial research. Cameron, is the RN releasing parrots from service the reason there is a population in St James's Park? That's parakeets, and they have managed to get everywhere from the UK. That's right. You've started the same in the past. The battleship armor could only take a finite number of hits to one panel, so I'm wondering if there's a parallel. There are a few. There are a few parallels. I'm being checked up on. Someone has actually come down to check that I have eaten food.
No. Coming to see if you could have a fluffy research assistant.
I can always have a fluffy research assistant. I think it's dried enough. And lid's on the paint can.
If it's not on paint buckets.
No, it isn't.
They have to be lifted up.
Well, if you want to lift them up, you're more than welcome to. Declan95. Hello, Declan. How are you doing? And hello, Martin Howell. I don't think I said hello to you earlier. Ships of the Second Pacific Squadron going to fight the Japanese. The Russians kept bringing back pets to a point they were afraid to guard the deck. Also, Rozensky had a parrot. Next one. Would my assessment that axing the supersonic Harrier and going with a subsonic Harrier was the right call, given the tech needed for supersonic ventilator just not there, and that in the British Imperial Federation that the US government would, with no viable alternative, they could operate in greater freighters for the US Marines by Harrier be reasonable? I'm not really sure. That's entirely, again, as I said, I haven't read that alternate history area, and I have no idea what their scenario is. So you're asking a question I can't really give you a basis on answer for. As for the supersonic VTOL, actually, it's interesting because I think the technology was viable as long as you were expecting the technology of it within the relation of the time. I think it could have achieved it. I think it would have been very interesting, and this is partially, I suppose, because I spent half my life, or used to, when I was at Kingston, when I was going into Kingston University to teach, not doing teaching from home. I would spend my time. I would be one of the offices I sat in. I sat underneath the plans for the aircraft and spent a lot of time studying it. H, your background, green, orange, or something kind of white in the middle. Saying something about Ireland? Actually, technically, that up there is white as well. That's white paint. It's only had one coat of white. These have had about 2 coats of white. So that's the first coat of white. It turns the wood greenish colour. But no, it's going iron brew colours. So orange, white, and blue. So all the colours of the orange of an iron brew bottle. Shipwreck missile, SN-19, AK P700 Granite, and the 7-ton Terror, Mach 2.5. Not the one CSA 0.3 ton supersonic missiles Mach 3 are better to beat. No, but it's It's a different armor profile to defeat one than to defeat the other. If the British got the BAC TSR2 to replace the Canberra and Hawker P1121 to replace the Hunter, Seavix, and the Lightning, would have been a better choice than the Phantom. It would have certainly benefited British industry, which might well have made it harder for people to cut them. Hang on to see. What would an Austro-Hungarian Ottoman aircraft carrier have looked like if ever allowed to happen? Austro-Hungarian. I'm hoping not like the Graf Zeppelin. I'm hoping they go something sensible. I have a feeling if they'd happened sort of in the post World War One period without World War One being fought, so they actually still existed, they'd probably look something similar to what HMS Hermes turned out as, considering she's the first purpose design carrier. So, that said, Dr. Clarke is more than correct. In the Falklands, they only took off from the ships, not landed or refitted, so that does have leave a big unknown. As a concept, I still think it's more than viable. I agree it's viable, it's going to sound strange. The thing I worry about with it as a viability is you could have that, but to make that viable, and especially to build a flight deck on what is a ship which doesn't have a deck but does have a load of container space, you would need to have a structure ready to go because that's not something you're going to be able to build quickly. And you also have to remember that these ships do not have, they have a superstructure at the end of them, which has the funnel and everything. So you're going to have to work out how you're going to land aircraft, which are used to coming in from the stern, and but they're probably going to have to do a hover landing, and a hover landing can be complicated on something that's moving if the superstructure is actually coming forward behind you. So you think about it. Here's the thing: if I am hovering here, I come in, swoop in, and I come in from the side, and I set myself to hover. The ship is moving forward. And then as I land, it's moving forward. So what I look like if I do a hover landing, if you were actually plotting it against the position on the ship, unless you are doing a slightly forward ascent, you end up landing further along back along the ship than where you started your descent. And if the island structure is here, that doesn't matter because they pass each other. But if the island structure is here, that can lead to an issue. So that's what I sort of worry about. It seems the Harry engine layout seems the only viable option in the 1960s. Remember the Yak 38 Forger? That has a different layout. That's the same layout as the F-35 from memory. So yeah, there are multiple layouts out there, and there are lots of people looking at different ideas. Wasn't sure I asked this before, but do we actually know how many aircraft they consider the Battleship Imperial conversions have? There are a range of options being looked at. Honestly, I think the most likely one is about 40. Supersonic Harrier could have flown and gone supersonic. It would have just wrecked every deck or hard standing it worked from. It would certainly have been interesting. It would certainly have been interesting. Now, 1934 is actually a very interesting year to have this book open at because it has a paper in it. Presented by Sir Arthur Johns, entitled Aircraft Carriers. The leading navies have adopted the aircraft carrier as a necessary type of warship. And with her older sisters, the capital ship, the cruiser, and the destroyer, the newcomer has been limited by the Washington-London treaties in unit displacement, in total displacement per navy, and in caliber of the main armament, which is absolutely wrong because, let's be honest, the main armament for an aircraft carrier is its aircraft! So, what you mean in caliber of main armament, you actually mean in caliber of guns, but you're using main armament because you're an idiot. Development of this new type of warship. It's no wonder Henderson preferred to let Stanley Goodall do the designing. The development of this new type of warship is an interesting one, and as but little information on this subject is available in the Royal Records of the institution, this paper is being prepared. The London Treaty defines an aircraft carrier as any surface vessel of war, whatever its displacement, designed for the specific and exclusive purpose of carrying aircraft, and so constructed that aircraft can be launched therefrom and landed thereon. By the Washington Treaty, the standard displacement must not exceed 27,000 tons, and the caliber of gun must not exceed 8 inches. By the terms of the same treaty, the British Empire and the United States may each have a total of carriers of 135,000 tons, Japan 81,000 tons, France and Italy 60,000 tons each. By the definition, those vessels which were fitted out during the war and arranged so that the aircraft could be flown off but not landed on are now termed seaplane carriers, since the aircraft used must be of that description. The Albatross of the Royal Australian Navy, the Commandant Trieste of the French Navy, are the latest examples of this type. Their tonnage is not included in that allowed by the Washington Treaty, rather that limited by the Washington Treaty. By Article 8, Chapter 1 of the Washington Treaty, all aircraft carrier tonnage in existence or building on November 12, 1921 is considered experimental and can be replaced within the total tonnage limit without regard to age. Argus, Hermes, Eagle, and Furious of the British Empire, Langley of the USA, and Hosa of Japan fall in this category. Carriers commenced after that date cannot be replaced until 20 years after their completion. 4. Although an aeroplane was successfully flown by the Wright brothers on December 17, 1903, not until 1908 their practicality of the new invention was publicly demonstrated by the Wrights in America and in France. By the time other pioneers were at work on the continent and in this country and successful flights were made, it was natural that the government departments should become interested in the matter, and progress was carefully watched to ascertain the possible use for military purposes. Have you noticed the F-22 or 35 type design that seems to be designed for stealth fighters built by nations? Yeah, anyone would think there's a sort of standard thing within current metallurgy that you can build. Sea Richards, Falklands War Dock. Could Hermes survive an external attack being an old ship? Both her and Invincible, due to their size, if they were hit by a single missile, would probably have been okay. Depending on where, of course, that missile hit, but then there would have been a loss of life and probably a loss of operational capability. But there's a big jump between that and actually losing the ship. Glad you're well, Battle 95. Yep, FRA, etc., and always keeping cool. Which mostly land-based powers produce some of the most interesting, challenging types of ships the RN to compete deal with? America had their heavy frigates in the Age of Sail. I would say the German Schnellboots were interesting and complicated to deal with. Honestly, there haven't really been that many ships which are just a massive pain for the British to deal with. The French submarine fleet in the turn of the 20th century would have been an issue, but they were working on that one. It just took them a while. It's running. Harry landing was done by coming alongside, matching the speed, then sliding over the deck, so evading the block of flats at the back wouldn't be a challenge. You'd be surprised. Because the Harrier does that, it comes alongside, and how does it fix its position alongside? There are things along. There is a great big island structure, and if you've ever noticed a Harrier landing and the pilots landing, now some pilots didn't need that, but most of the pilots you did use that as their bearing. But you don't have that there. You now have it behind you. I'd say leave it a while, Stafford, for getting more aircraft. Did anyone think to tell the captain of Glorious that his aircraft were his main armament? I have no idea, but someone should have. Seriously. Yeah, the Yak 38 engine layout was a failure, as it was impractical, and the whole lift fan design wouldn't work until technology advanced in a few decades. If I remember correctly, Yak 38 served at sea and were used. It's impractical. It's not really as well designed as it should be, but there again, that's a Soviet built ship and they had interesting issues. Take care, Jonathan. Found us on the UFO. A Swiss US carrier is highly improbable. Probably. Thank you, Paul Bestwick. That is pretty cool. Let's see. Yep. Iron Brute. The important stuff in life. You all see me eating the chicken nuggets, right? Sure, I think at the Yak 4 1 for 1. Yak 38 Forger. It was the Vittel fighter, and it was an aircraft which operated from the Kievs. It had, well, a very interesting system. And it's actually the model that was used as the basis for the F-35. The Yak-38 was a highly interesting aircraft in terms of it. The fact it actually flew was quite amazing. It was what was designed for the Kievs, and it was got through on a shoestring budget in a shoestring scenario just because they need something. Remember, this was for their first generation of fixed-wing heavy aviation cruisers. And I will not get into the rant today of That 60-second response almost turned into of the number of people who translated air aviation as aircraft from Russian. It translates to aviation. It's, it's the joy of naval history that you have these debates. I don't know if I you mean. Speaking of Finland, apparently they are making a corvette class. That really surprised me given the historic fleets in the Cold War. I'm not surprised. The corvette class is probably sensible for the Finns because they're probably thinking along the lines of having something which has the firepower to cause trouble. In terms of it's probably getting on with some long range strike missiles. Remember, the Finns have joined NATO now, so now they have advantage of having access to NATO tech. Not they didn't beforehand, but now they get NATO rather than foreign levels of that tech. And probably it could mean they end up with a strike missile of a decent range striking missile. That's probably why they want to call that. Finland and Sweden have both joined NATO. Talking about Russian helicopters are quite good, though the Helix and the Mi-24 are very good. Russian helicopters do tend to be very, very good in terms of reliability. They also tend to be kind of like the AK-47 of the aircraft world in that what they do, they don't do particularly spectacularly, but they always do what you want them to do. It's actually military ratification. I think most nations have now ratified in NATO. I'm trying to remember who hasn't. I think most have. I think it was a very, very rapid ratification process. I'm assuming, I think the Corvette class was announced in 2020. They've certainly been looking at the next generation vessel since 2020. Mm-hmm. Okay, So far, it's been ratified by Canada, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Estonia, United Kingdom, Albania, Germany, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Bulgaria, Latvia, Slovenia, and Croatia. So that's going quite well. And that's according to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I'm just checking the various sources to see what the updates are. Mm-hmm. President Erdogan has stated that Turkish ratification is dependent upon their NATO agreement promises. Yeah. Basically, Aragon seems to have made a lot of noise and then not be getting much. Sorry, the laptop's over there on the fridge, as you saw at the beginning. Oh, sorry, they'll most likely use naval strike missiles, Swedish RBS-15, both good missiles for taking out enemy ships. I would say I'm reckoning it's going to be naval strike missile. In fact, I'm going to move this just a tad, just so I can see things better. Let me just check that. Mm-hmm. Da-da-da. Seriously. I can have so much fun playing with this flooring. Seriously, there are so many different parts that I mean, muck around with. Two, four, 6, 8, 10. So 5 in. Takes that to there. Is that's one with a curve end. I don't want a curve end. That one. I want a flat end. Nope, 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 nope. There's got to be some flat ends here. Ah, there's a flat end. Ooh, I could do. That will work. But let's see what I can do with that one. Yeah. This is disturbingly fun stuff, this one. Thank you, Stafford. I know, Turkey was bought off. I think Macedonia had objections. Turkey was Turkey. Actually, a question for that show. Would the Frudeck cruisers have been allowed through the Dardanelles before they were reclassified as carriers? Probably, yes, because they were technically cruisers. Nice to get everyone's asked a question a few times now, isn't it? Do you watch the War Thunder shooting range? No. Mainly because if I ever want to watch War Thunder stuff, I have this gentleman called Jamie, who will soon show me a lot of War Thunder stuff if I give him half a chance. He's otherwise known as Jamie Seedell. He's very, very smart. Well, that's right. NSM production line Norway is going to be hot. NSM production line in Norway is probably going to have to duplicate somewhere else as well. They're probably going to have to set up production elsewhere as a backup option. I'm sure there will be a situation we found to solve the Hungary problem. Veterani Sumi, the Finnish class is the Pojima class with lots of Swedish weapons planned. No, I mean, look at Sierra Leone. If it only took one extra Legion Air Force helicopter pilot and then only for stall the RAF advance, buying time for the SL Army to regroup. Yes. A good helicopter and a good crew can cause a lot of trouble. Gabriel V's and modified Sea Sparrows are supposed to be missiles that we'll use. Could be. Thunder City UFO, they'll be ratified by year's end. I wouldn't be surprised if they're ratified before that. There could well be a NATO conference soon. I think they have been talking about having another NATO conference. And they'll want to have them there for that. So it could well be that whoever's Prime Minister of the UK by that point and Macron and Biden get on the phone to whoever's holding these things up and go, if you hold it up so we can't have them at this meeting, we will cause you trouble. In lots and lots of little ways. Ways you won't be able to point at us, but which you'll know came from us. I remember saying to a Russian engine designer, Russian engines tend to be rather agricultural, to which he replied the average Russian mechanic thought of how big a hammer he needed for a given task. They build engines, tanks, guns, helicopters, and ships all the same way. Pretty much. But they still build fairly good stuff. For example, let's see, what was the difference between UK upholding to protect Belgium versus Poland and now NATO protecting Ukraine? The difference was the UK gave its word to protect them. Whereas in terms of NATO protecting Ukraine, NATO has not given its word to protect Ukraine. NATO didn't make that promise. Medicine UFO. This is the interior of the famous shed, I guess. This is the interior as it is at the moment. It's currently a work in progress. It's looking quite nice to my eyes. I have to admit, I have gone for something which is as non-white and blue as possibly I can get, although there is white shelving coming up behind me. But leaving that to one side, it made sense. It's nice shelving to have. And it's looking fairly good. There's more shelving going underneath there. The fridge is slotted in, so my own brew is going to be cold from now on, which is good. My desk will go next to my fridge, so it'll go Slightly more a lot towards the door than it did previously, and slightly more in front of the radiator than it did previously, but that'll be okay. Radiator will be behind the desk, but yeah, that'll warm the room up. Do you think the technology is there for supersonic VTOL when all attempts failed in the 1960s? Seems to indicate otherwise. There was technology there. It was fairly good. Uh how do I put this? The engineers were capable. They were making the breakthroughs necessary. It wouldn't have been how we do it today. It certainly wouldn't have been fly by wire and off balance. It would have been a far more stable aircraft design as necessitated by their flight controls, but it would have been viable. See, is that covered or foam padding? It's interesting stuff. It's foam with sort of carpet on top. It's called a cork foam system. And I presume that's because of its structure rather than necessarily the foam being made of cork, but I don't know because it could be. It does seem to be all natural. I have currently got 35 or 36 down. I think I'm going to need another 36 to cover the space that is my office. And the packs are quite good in terms of pricing. Admittedly, I'm going to need to find the money now for more of these, but I'll probably wait till payday. But it will work, and it's nice stuff. It provides you with all the protection you need for your floor, for your feet, and most importantly for your fluppies when they're lying on the floor to make sure they don't hurt themselves. Uh, Simplicity is a virtue if enhances reliability. The difference being that, generally speaking, NATO countries have the option, have that option, plus the option of going maddeningly complicated. Yep. Andrew Cox, any aircraft can use a ski jump. Theoretically, even an airliner would get a boost, but I wouldn't want to be a passenger. No, and you need a very big ski jump for it to actually be a boost to an airliner. And it would need to be a lot steeper, a lot shallower angle. Poland could take a license to build those NSMs very happily. I don't think necessarily Poland's a good idea to build stuff because, as much as I love the Poles, if you consider where Norway is and you consider where Poland is, they're both pretty much on the front line. Honestly, if you're going to have the NSMs, you need them built in a reliable country that's far away from the front line that you could get support from. So you'd probably be looking at the UK, Portugal. They're fairly reliable partners. They tend to get involved in things. With a high tech population, easy access. I would like to say Spain, but the trouble is, and this is going to sound terrible, there's a reasoning for this. Okay, most of Spain's good industry and good areas are actually on their Mediterranean coast rather than their Atlantic coast, and I see the Atlantic fleet needing to resupply and the Baltic and the get up there to supply that far more likely than the Mediterranean quickly. So I would want an Atlantic coast nation for it. The room does look very good. Didn't realize you were renovating. It's almost done. Yes, it's almost done. New floor's gone down. That was the big renovation because it was slowly deteriorating underneath my feet. Because we got a good floor supplied by the company, and then the builders relayed it 3 times. And relaying it 3 times led to issues with it. And those are issues which I've had to deal with by actually pouring concrete on it. Hello, updated shit is looking interesting. Glad. For some reason, I can't watch Impact's video on all other Hazard Perry class, so I forget being sunk in a moment. I know, it is heartbreaking. And look, someone will have to load that message into by design. In other words, dude, don't make me send a carabao order. Calvin Husband. Darius NSM was developed to be a successor to the Penguin anti-ship missile, which could be carried by helicopter. Any integrated NSM naval strike missiles to their halos? I don't think so. Thunder's UFO. Wish I had space such a shed. It is good, and especially when you realise that it's a double shed, because the other side of that wall is my sister's office. Well, technically, that paneling, then a load of soundproofing, then a wall, then some more soundproofing, then paneling, then there's my office and my sister's office. So there's a gap between the offices of about that distance. So, based on my own knowledge of cutlery, the supports in some of the shelves look sus. I think you're talking about these ones, and that's because I haven't put in this bit yet. So that bit will go in. But these have been holding it for the last year and been fine. But they will go in, and then they'll be fine. But that's because these bits are really, and I put it politely, interesting. And yeah, that's getting stronger already when I pull it back to be properly centered. Done, and boom. Yeah. So the post will go in, and that will hold that together, and that'll be nice and a little bit stronger. I do realise it looks a bit sus, but you have to remember I have built the whole shelving out of offcuts of wood left over from the construction of sheds. So it might look sus, but it's actually all fairly solid and well tested. I have spent time today sitting up there, so it'll take my weight. Take care, Andrew Cox. So anyway, I saw a concept for a ski ramp refit for the Chinese carrier with two giant flathead screws. Not particularly nice. So that flooring is commonly used for child's areas here in Canada. Low impact, easy to clean, and durable, and I believe made from recycled tires. Very good choice for areas you want safe, and good for dogs. But it came from Amazon and was incredibly cheap and incredibly viable. Rejigsaw tiles. My kid has some with happy pictures. Tempting, but I've gone for the grey and white checkerboard approach. So at some point, if I want to, I can get them all out of here and play chess. Although for that, I do need 64 tiles. Guggenheim, is any route being drafted to resupply the Baltic states? Well, that's made actually be more viable now we've been able to push to an extent, coming from different directions. If you've got Sweden and you've got Finland as part of your NATO alliance, resupplying the Baltic states suddenly goes from being very difficult to being actually viable in terms of you could get the supplies Narvik to Sweden, from Narvik to the Swedish coast, and then you only have to get from Sweden to the Baltic states. So that suddenly becomes slightly more viable, but that route then becomes even more critically important. And securing NATO, Norway becomes even more important. So expect the Royal Marines to have to reform their brigade structure at some point, because suddenly fighting in the northern climes, in the northern flank of NATO, is going to become something which requires an actual military force, not we're here as a deterrent presence. With what you mean about old history, I'd come to the conclusion that Imperial Federation version of the British Empire and USA would end up in a US-China relationship where they can't destroy the other without destroying themselves economically as well. That depends on what the scenario is, and you also have to remember if it's the British style federation, the British might well have gone with the Imperial first, in which case they might find themselves sufficiently disconnected from the Americans they can survive without them, and vice versa. But it depends. I seem to remember under that scenario, America has gone into a deeply communist state, so, possibly. Thank you, Stafford. You reached them before me. We're having a fun time with the pawn box this evening. It's nice to see. At what point should the Alaska class being cancelled? What kept their construction going? What kept their construction going was the threat of war continuing and war going on. And it's if you have the war going on. Excuse me, I just move these. The reason I'm moving these is there is something fluffy just started running around the garden and trying to get in to the office. Hello, you. You come to test out your floor. Are you happy with the floor? Is it a comfy floor? Is this now all your space? It is your space. Okay. What are you up to? You're hunting something. No, there's no reindeer treats. So, at what point could the Alaska class have been cancelled? What kept this construction going was, of course, fear of war and what would happen, especially in an attack on Japan. If they actually did have to invade Japan, which was the great fear, then the sheer amount of losses would have made the Alaska class essential. The fact is, though, there's also the reality of what does Russia do? Because we always talk about the Soviet Union going on, with what happens if they did capital ship construction, if they started building some sort of battleship level vessel like Stalin wanted, then that probably necessitates new battleships post World War II. Lion class or something gets completed by the British, a Super Iowa gets completed by the Americans. However, if the Russians had instead built and really turned on the guns of building a huge number of Soldovs, you probably would have seen the Americans start building some Alaskas to counter that, and the British building an Alaska equivalent of the British. Because you must remember, the British don't really accept that they've shrunk back in naval status even though it's the reality. They don't mentally accept it until after the Suez Crisis. So they would have done something. There's always a lag. Please note there is always a lag between a nation falling back in status and it actually admitting it's falling back in status. Actually, let's see. Have you seen Sal's newest video regarding the Bonhomme Richard fire and how it's only now Navy is handing out and sanctions for it to mostly now retired service members? Not yet, but I have been planning on having a chat with them about it at some point. Firstly, just looking at just guns, how dangerous are modern destroyers frigates compared to most gun-heavy ships of the past? They're far more accurate, but they run out of firepower quicker. So it's a case of what are they taking on? If you stripped a modern warship of all its missiles, and he said, right then, you've got to go fight that battleship over there, that's probably not a good scenario for them. If they're fighting a fellow destroyer, they might well have a chance. Fighting a cruiser, that gets more complicated depending on what type of cruiser it is. Whether it's actually a heavy cruiser or it's an 8-inch cruiser or a light cruiser. Greenland, that's the problem, is it not? We basically will rely on sea and call me as a skeptic, but I don't think it's going to be hold for long. Well, that depends. You see, you don't actually need to hold the sea. This is the point. People often consider sea control as being an absolute. Command of the ocean as being an absolute. You either have it or don't. Now, I do expect the Russians to seek to do sea denial, but if you've got things like Chinooks, they can cross that distance. Same with some of the thing. You could get a C-130, do an emergency rough strip landing or something. I haven't got any in here at the moment. They're all in the other room. Sorry. None in here at the moment because it's all being built with. As cute as you are, there are none of those things you seek in here. It would all depend on what was being used to get it across the water, but also, yes, the Russians might achieve a level of sea denial, but it's also the fact of how long can they achieve that for? Is it a permanent or is it a transitory? Are you, with the right number of escorts and aircraft, able to achieve temporary sea control for NATO to transit the convoy? Because you only need to control that sea for as long as it takes the convoy to cross. That's how long you need to control that space. No longer, just that. I know, but Canada is set for a bad recession. Potentially not. I never like to talk about recessions. Economics is one of those interesting things. There is always a dozen people around who are prepared to make predictions, and when they come true or false, they're never there because they're going off making more predictions. Economics is always full of predictions, not always full of facts. Doc, you have said your sister is a civil engineer and taught DRAC, so do you consult her when discussing infrastructure implications of naval policy like you discuss on miltrons? Occasionally, but rarely, because my sister is a geotechnical civil engineer. She is a civil engineer. She's done all the full civil engineering training. She's chartered by the Royal Institute of Civil Engineers and the Royal Institute and the Institute of Surveyors. I think are they in the Royal Institute of Surveyors or not? Anyway, she's chartered by both the surveyors and the civil engineers. So she's very, very qualified. However, she specializes in the geotechnical area of civil engineering, which means she's one of the few people who could probably rig it so it would look like a completely natural landslide if she wanted to take someone out. So be careful if you upset her and you walk in mountains or anywhere where landslides are possible. She could do that. She is currently in the process of working on things like stabilizing the Isle of Wight, stopping London disappearing into its own clay, trying to make it possible for Crossrail 2 to work, all those things. She is really, 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 really smart and really good at engineering. And she also heads the foundation year for Kingston University. So she teaches civil engineering, civil engineers, air engineers, mechanical engineers, because she basically, like me, she loves engineering. Yes, it's like me. I'm a naval historian, but I love history. So political history, economic history, social history, industrial history, technological history, all the stuff. I will go and look at history because I love history. And she's a civil engineer, but she loves engineering. So she teaches the foundation year, and I would I hope her next job, if she gets promoted out of it, will be the combined postgraduate researchers, because I think that's the other area she would love to run. And I think that would be the great area because then she could run all those engineers and look after them all. And I would say that's also the problem with her getting promoted because she is so good at all the different engineering areas. There's a great temptation to leave her in the foundation students. But the trouble is that means she won't make professor because they won't let a professor run the foundation year for some reason. But she's incredibly smart. Sarah Thompson, he's hunting the blue mouse. Probably. I was asking, considering we now have a USN amphibious ready group full of any angry Marines operating around Gotland, plus one or two NSM military, yeah, sucks to be in Königsberg. Tobias GR3, why? You said a magic word, so now I'm incredibly curious about British Alaska class equivalent. Well, they expect it to be broadly similar. 12-inch guns, most likely. Possibly 14-inch guns, because the British would have them from the King George V. So the British might cheat and do a Super Alaska, which has 6 14-inch guns in 3 twin turrets. That's what the British could do. So they've got their 14-inch guns, because the Alaska class has 12-inch. All right. Yeah, the British basically, it's got 9 12-inch guns in 3 triple turrets. So if they could say they provide the same firepower if they've got 6 twin 14-inch guns. The other thing would be to just get 12 and take the 12, probably possibly buy the 12-inch 50 design off the United States, or find make their own 12-inch 50. But I think they're probably end up going with a 14-inch. Again, a good way of claiming status. Let's see, everyone. What name might the RN Ship Naming Committee have chosen for the Mini Renown large cruiser? Well, especially if HMS Renown is decommissioned, they might well have gone with the Renown class, because it would take on the name of the battle cruisers and show their status. The other option would be to go with the continuation of the counties and towns lineage. Always a good one. They might go Saints. But I think probably if they're going to go anything, they go Admirals. Well, hang on, no, they've done that with the battleships quite recently, so probably not. Admirals, Commodores. They could go, and the battles are already so as destroyers. So yeah, actually no, I go with Renowns. They go R class. If they need the crash build, could we have seen the USSR copying the Revenge class they did with the B-29, given that they had the Royal Sovereign to copy? Not really. I remember Dr. Clarke, I think, said Britain would do a bit. No. Britain would never go for a 10-inch gun. Raleigh's coming back. No one ever goes for a 10-inch gun if they can avoid it. Why? Because a 10-inch gun is right in the difficult area, right in the difficult area. The 14-inch gun is already available, built, developed, and in service. They have a working twin turret. They could cheat. So basically, they would need 3 twin turrets from the King George V to make it work. I agree about 9.2-inch gun being the best gun for a cruiser, but for an Alaska-class super cruiser or heavy cruiser, yeah. Where did I put the mouse? Anyone spotted it? Oh, there it is. Airline economics is full of projection of a basically chaotic system. Good luck projecting over 3/4. Yeah, it gets interesting when people start projecting out. I saw a study today which said, oh, in about 10, no, it was about 2040, so about 18 years' time, the Polish economy, if it continues on at the same rate as it's doing, will overtake the British economy. Going, well, 18 years' time is a long, long time in economics. 18 weeks is a long time in economics. 18 years is massive. So anyway, we need her on channel for a history of short offences. I keep trying to get her to do something on channel. What happened to the other way? It's sinking into the sea. It's made of clay. The trouble is with a triple 9.2-inch guns, okay, is the British would have to develop a 9.2-inch gun and pay for it to go into service. If you're talking about building an Alaska class, especially World War II, they will go with the cost possible way. So they might go with an 8 14-inch gun ship, but probably they go with a 6 14-inch gun ship to match up. So the Americans would have the 9 12-inch guns, and the British would have the 6 14-inch guns. I was under the impression they would have to make a new 9.2-inch guns, as the last one was pre-ordered and not good for a late post-World War II scenario. They would have had to make new ones. And if they'd been building it in, let's put it this way, if pre-World War II, if the World War II doesn't happen until 1945, the Alaskas come out, the British response would have probably been a 9.2-inch gun ship, right? They'd have probably developed that. But if you're talking post-World War II and its response to what the Soviets are building, then the British will probably go with a 14-inch gun because they have it on the shelf. First of all, let's see. Super UK Alaska sounds like a renowned replacement. Pretty much it would be a renowned replacement. Okay, 10-inch is not a good choice because 10-inch has all the weight penalties and difficulties of maneuvering of a battleship gun, i.e., something bigger than a 10-inch, without the space of fire of a 9.2-inch and below. Basically, the 10-inch is at the critical point where it's not. It's the same length of time to fire it as a 12 or 14-inch gun, but it's not as powerful as a 14-inch gun, and it's just as complicated. It's just as complicated to deal with as a 10 and as a 12 and 14-inch gun. So it has none of the advantages of being a smaller gun. And a 9.2 has a much greater rate of fire than 10-inch. A much greater rate of fire. Jeff, I had a bad experience with 250, so I would agree. Probably 14-inch 45. Yeah. Maybe they'd extend it and make it a 14-inch 50, but it would be the 14-inch 45 that would be the basis of it. Don't remember saying to Clarke. I clearly had a misremembering something. I don't know where I heard the 10-inch thing now. But I haven't. Probably you've heard me talk about the 10-inch thing on a couple of times because I've answered that question a few times and I'm always happy to answer it again because it's one of those things where on paper it should be the perfect solution, and in reality it just isn't. Come away from the squirrel. Come on. In you come. In you come. Leave the squirrels alone. Look at you getting dirty bushes over my nice clean carpet. Seriously, Fluff. I Ugh. Right. I know what you want. Excuse me, everyone, a second. I've got to go get something from the gazebo. Stay. You entertain everyone while I go grab them. Luckily, your auntie, Mrs. Drack, had clearly labelled these things, hadn't she? Yes. You're lucky your biggest fan had labelled these things so I could easily find them. You should owe her many, many hugs when you next see her. Right. Get a rest. I was asking, would the Iron actually need an Alaska-style supercruiser in 44? I'd say more carriers would be more useful. Both German and Italian navies would have lost toast of point. In 1944, yes, but this is in 1944. If World War II doesn't happen until 1945, then the British will be building supercruisers probably to match the Alaskas, right? And what the Japanese will be building. That's if World War II doesn't start in 1945. If post World War II we have the Russians building a whole load of cruisers, and then the British will probably end up building that are sort of, let's say, 12-inch gun cruisers. The British probably end up building their own their own version of the Alaska class to match in with it. Listen, is there good source data? There are John Lambert's books on guns, which are very, very good. Guns and mounts. I'm not sure if his capital ship, his cruisers and capital ship guns has come out yet. I know his small ships, they're edited by Norman Freeman. I think there's at least 3 of them out. I'm not sure if the final one's out yet. So anyway, why are nations building their capitals in swamps of clay? Washington, D.C., Berlin, London. Because they're near rivers, which makes them easy to communicate with in their world of pre-railway, pre-roads being what they are today. I think you might have a buddy coming to join you. So a 14-inch renown. Sort of. To an extent, an idea of it. Are you locking him in here? You're getting your hose free. Where is the mighty Fluff? Is he out there? Oh, good. Chris Ryan, Doc Clark, do the treaties get signed if all the parties are actively willing to spend money on their fleets? They don't even get signed if even a few are actively willing to spend money on their fleets. If anyone's actively willing to spend money on their fleets, they're in trouble. The British are the most willing to spend money on their fleets, and they built up to the treaty limitation because they always will do, because they always will invest. But the fact is, they're banking in the treaty that the Americans won't invest. if the Americans had started matching the British build in the 1920s and matching the British force strength rather than not investing like they were, then I wouldn't have been surprised if the British actually ended up breaking the treaty and saying they couldn't sustain it in 1930. There is actually a potential of it happening. Thank you, Colin. If oil goes down, then Canada does too. The little bit of oil industry we have left relies on $110 a barrel. Although that was before the carbon taxes came down closer to $200. It's interesting. These things are all going to be going on. Georgine, note for next performance review. The fluffy research assistant did not entertain the audience. You didn't. You didn't entertain. You didn't entertain the audience. Why didn't you entertain the audience? You're supposed to entertain them. That's what you do. That's what you have to do. You have to look after the students when I'm not here. You know, you do quite well when they're university students for some reason. Basically, you just hop up in my chair and look at them through the camera. It might be because you're still not used to this because there's no desk in here and you're looking at the desk behind me. Once there's a railway on that, you'll understand what it's for. Paul Westwick, if the British were to lease anything from the US, surely they would also load a mechanism of the US 8-inch guns? Oh, they'd love that. The British would love the auto-loading mechanism for the 8-inch guns. 4 quad 8-inch guns would be very, very nice. Where would the Kronstadts fall in the heavy, super large, or battlecruiser debate? Kronstadts. Let's see. Hang on. Move that off that position. The Kronstadt class, they are the Project 69, as I would call them. That's because I'm rude. The Project 69s, if they'd existed and come into service, they are roughly 40,000 tons, 32 knots, and armed with 6 15-inch guns. So yeah, they're firmly in the battlecruiser camp. Firmly in the battlecruiser camp. In fact, they're in the standard load of 39,660 tons camp. So yeah, if they'd been built, it would have been interesting. Very interesting. If the Kronstadts or indeed if the Stalingrads are being built, it would have been very interesting. Alright, Sean Quigley. Dr. C and anyone else, with the advance in technology, do you see a time for completely wind-powered or solar wind-powered hybrid cargo ships again? There are now electric cargo ships. I don't see solar power or wind power necessarily coming into completely power them, but they could well be a combination of hydrogen and something. Obviously, 14-inch rounds, yes, but with triple mounts. Again, the reason I've not gone for a triple turret is because what do the British have available in post 1945 if they want to rapidly build something? They have a twin 14-inch turret available. They have it from the King George V. They can use it. They will use it. We know the British had built a 12-inch 50 cal Mark 15 in 1953. So, other than the battlecruisers, what else keeps the British Alaska from getting off the ground? Pretty much that, and budget. You see, the thing is, the people often forget the Royal Navy is running out of money, not the British government. The British government is still paying down the debt from World War One at a rate faster than it needed to. It made that destroyers to prioritise that. Now, if it had made it slightly slower and invested that money in the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, even a little bit more money in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, you might have seen some very interesting things appear. I doubt you'd have seen a 12-inch 50 cal Mark 15 in 1933 appear from a British Alaska class because it would have had to be ordered in 1937-38 when they were basically giving up on the treaties, and they were ordering Vanguard and King George V, and there's a limit to how much armor plate's available. Is Zeb Zeb here? Sorry, my sister's talking to the dog and was raising the question in such a way I thought she was asking me about where the dog was. Alfred, hello, Alfred, B228. What sort of improvements could be made to the 8-inch 55 cal Mark 71? DSN decided to revisit the idea of using an 8-inch gun. Mostly we'd probably see it in ammunition. In the ammunition it could stop. Because you could fit a lot of interesting stuff into an 8-inch gun. And it would have been interesting if they had revisited that and fitted that 8-inch gun to the Zumwalt class as the beginning weapon, and then said they were working on the railgun version. Because that would two single 8-inch mounts based off that design could have been really, really interesting for the Zumwalts and would have been really quite scary. Oil is not cleaner. It's more reliable, possibly, but it's not cleaner. There's nuclear power for starters. That's cleaner. There's hydro power. That's cleaner. Hydroelectric, and can generate percentage more power when it's well written, well put in place. But there's less places, of course, you can employ it. Gas is cleaner than oil. Gas is a lot cleaner than oil, but gas is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. No, it's a case of there are power sources out there which make sense. It's just getting them down to the cost point, and it's going to be very tumultuous to transition because we've got the entire energy system set up one way, and it's been functioning that way for nearly a century, and it's going to have to change. And mainly, I'm pro changing, not because of, well, partially because I like the environmental stuff, because I do have enough family members who are asthmatic that I worry about those sort of things, in terms of air quality especially. But more, and this is probably going to confuse a few people, but I'm going to get it out there anyway. Autarky, i.e. self-sufficiency. And I know autarky is not a popular phrase, but it was actually around pre the Nazis, but they did particularly like to bring it out. But the idea of countries being self-sufficient enough in power that they can be less prone to the impacts of the whims and wishes of the global energy market is quite attractive to me as someone who deals with the whims and wishes of the global energy market quite regularly. Carolina, thank you for the PC budget. I'd love to see how I'd love to see those choppy UAD videos, and I'm looking forward to seeing them not so choppy. No, if you buy a Dell, I'll take the super chat back. My plan is to build my own. Okay. I didn't think I'd have time to do all this, but I've had time to do it all. I've got I can actually show you. I've got my tower and my old PC, which I built myself. I just need to buy a new motherboard, a new graphics card. I've got the hard drive for it already. I've managed to get the power. The power supply unit from the old one works very well. Thank you very much. Because I got a very very good 700-watt unit. So that's a very very good useful unit, and that also so that's there. But I need to take out the motherboard, replace that, replace the CPU, replace the cooler for the CPU, and replace the graphics cards because I had bridged, SLI bridged graphics cards, and now we don't have bridge. We don't do that, but you know. That's agreement. So battle cruiser and lack of funds kill off British large cruiser, basically, pretty much. You don't you think you don't think they would go with a pair of quad 14s? No. Quad 14 would make it too fat, right? Quad 14 you have to go battleship size. If you're going cruiser size, cruiser in inverted commas, super cruiser really. Basically you're reinventing the early battle cruisers. You'll want to go for twin turrets so you can have a thinner hull for higher speed. So you'll go for twin 14s and you go for three turrets. I know, seen lithium or coal mines, definitely not environmentally friendly. Nope, they're not. The power itself is friendly. The supply, getting the stuff to the point at which it can supply power is certainly an issue, and one which needs to be taken more seriously and looked into. I was asking, programmable course correcting 8-inch ammo with a large range extender, something like Super Excalibur rounds on a modern cruiser. Yep, I take that. Where are my Zumwalts? I know. This is the trouble. You see, this is the point I make about the Zumwalts a lot. The Zumwalts are a very good design. The trouble is, what happens to the Zumwalt is all the tech in them is the person called Rumsfeld. Basically, like with the LCS, tries to reach for the moon. Now, here is the thing. If I'd been building the LCS, looking at what the Americans wanted, etc., I would have literally gone to the Danish and gone, can I please purchase the license to build the Stanflex system? Because the Sandflex system would have been a 90% solution. And that would have been what I'd have gone with for my first generation of LCS to get them into service and get the system and make sure all the commonality and everything was working. And then I'd start working on something fancy. Oh, thank you. Hide that one, definitely. First time they. Oh, they caught one and then they didn't catch the rest. Thank you. Thanks, Stafford. And report for pornography. Okay, bye bye. And so you have the scenario that you're in where they built these things which really they tried to get all the Star Wars level tech, and it's not ready yet. The 8-inch cruiser is would have been the Zumwalts would have been viable with 8-inch guns if you'd gone back to the old 8-inch gun and you'd gone, well, eventually they're fitted for and they're fitted to be capable of taking eventually the 8-inch railgun once we've got it working. But they've got the 8-inch conventional gun at the moment, which will use the existing rounds. So it's life basically. It's a case of they've gone for the shiny, shiny, shiny when they could have gone for the really good and cool, but just not quite so shiny. It's not just cost. It's not cost. It's business as usual. Solar and wind are cheaper, and they are not the only ones. So wind is definitely cheaper and very good at that. At the moment, solar is definitely getting there, and I would like to see myself. I would like to see a policy where it was funded for where there was some sort of funding available, grant available for homeowners to get solar panels at home because it would seem sensible to me. And by grant, the thing is, what most people need is the upfront money. It's not the case is that some of the grants when we set up, it's basically it's very much a upper middle class scenario where if you've got the spare money, you can afford it, or if you are very lucky, or if you have worked hard and have managed, are in the unique scenario of being, well, dual income, households with reduced expenses, you can afford the upfront money of putting in solar panels. And we certainly looked at it for our house, but there are lots of people who aren't in that situation and aren't in that scenario. And really, I would like there to be a system whereby you could get a grant from the government for the upfront cost. So that, people who are on limited incomes can get solar panels and things put on their houses, which can reduce their energy or even eliminate their energy bills, which could be a great way of helping people get out of poverty and get out of being trapped into a scenario where they can't afford to build savings because they're always worried about bills. If their electricity is mostly being taken care of by solar power and a battery, then they are suddenly in a far better scenario. I think we don't. Why do we not forget? Why do we forget that we have no idea how well the G3, RN3, and anti use South Dakota, Lexington class, Japanese Magi, Tosa Key, and number 13 class would have done as they were all cancelled? Because we like to presume how smart we are. And let's be honest, the N3s were going to be floating blocks of steel, so they were basically going to be almost indestructible. To take one of them out would have taken a battering. Seriously, the density of an N3 design is obscene. Well, 92. Drat can help. Yes, he can help. He and I both like to build computers for fun. Let's see. How does 15 9.2-inch guns like the Brooklyn class for the Super Alaska? Let's call them the Reducer class. They're cool if you've got the 9.2-inch guns available. Founders of UFO have not heard of bridging graphics cards for 15 years at least. I know. I had. Ooh, what was it? Actually, no. There she's does. You see, I've had three in a row which I set up to be bridging because it worked really well for me. But I do admit that the last one I built, I was using slightly old tech to build it. I don't know. Well, as I said, I've got 600x, 600, also amazing, but 700 watt is a little too small. Um, yeah, it'll do. You have to remember the last time I built it was that was packed up in the roof during COVID, so it was free. Yeah, it was built about 5 to 6 years ago, I suppose. It was due to be built before, already built again before COVID, and then COVID just died. You're doing well, Stafford. I was asking. I mean, I like that. I love the Tram and LCS design of hull trim glass. Look at the size of that helipad and available width. The hangar. Make it a larger and as an ASW frigate. So much possibilities. It would have been interesting, especially if you build it with proper, I don't know, sacrificial hull, sacrificial anodizing blocks to sacrifice to stop its hull wearing out, and I don't know, some other things. It could have been made really quite cool. I suspect a lot of people don't spend money on their solar panels for roofs on more cultural reasons than functional. You'd be surprised. Especially as some of the stuff you can get solar panels now are really quite nice looking. You can get ones which look like lead slate. And I mean that honestly. They are put into heritage areas and you would only know they're not lead slate if you got really close to them. I'm talking you're standing below the house looking directly up. I know this because my sister, because of some of the stuff she specializes in, she does a lot of green engineering and deals with a lot of green engineering. And I go to some of the conferences and some of the things, exhibitions with her, and I look at the stuff and I just go, oh my lord. And then when I go for walks in places like the Peak District and the Lake District where these things have been put in already, I see them and go, oh, I know what that is. I know what that is because I know what I'm looking for. Wind turbines for low life like so it's had some more. As long as you bang on combined gas turbines, I know, not batteries, nuclear. I would go with. Are you talking about wind turbines in terms of the sea-mounted ones? Because the at-sea turbines are actually proving very good. The offshore wind turbine farms are very good. Going on, I'm in a very lucky geographical position, and for me, it's a no-brainer. Here, the upfront is down to 5k euros for panels plus battery. We have 50% instant discount at receipt, which is really 30%. Cool. Are you trying to get out now? Look, you are not going out there to chase squirrels. Going on, there was an upfront grant available a couple of years ago. The council here is now looking at fitting solar panels and batteries to new social housing as standard. When I was a borough councillor, I tried to vote that in, and I got told it wasn't possible because it wouldn't fit with the national planning system. And I was going, I'm sure it does, because I'm fairly sure we can make it part of our local plan and local law requirements, but that was a while back. Come on, I've got a 750W, but a watt, but 380 is mighty transit spikes that mine hasn't. Nice ignorant. How likely is it that a Type 93 Long Lance could defeat the G3 N3's torpedo defense system? Okay. Depending on where a single one hit, it could potentially cause damage. But a single torpedo hit is not going to really sink either one of those ships. But multiple torpedo hits, yes. So it's one of those cases of, if you manage to hit with enough torpedoes, you're going to still sink them. But that's the same for any ship. Their survivability means they are probably going to be slightly more difficult to get the hits in the right place. But if you get the hits in the right place, you get the hits in the right place. Yeah, but look how Germany got with offshore wind power. Yeah, but UK's done better with offshore wind power than Germany. Don't take this the wrong way, but it has. I mean, fires involving lithium batteries have broken out on several shipping aircraft. At least one plane crash has been due to the lithium batteries overheating. Yeah, you have to be careful with them. Shall we get back to the 1934 write-up of aircraft carriers? In the United States, the probable usefulness of aircraft for recreational purposes was soon appreciated and proposals made for tests on ships. On November 14, 1910, Eugene Eli, a former employee of Glenn Curtiss, flew an aircraft from a platform 82 feet long and 24 feet wide, inclined at 5 degrees to the horizontal and erected over the forward weather deck of the United States cruiser Birmingham. The available run was 57 feet, and Eli, when he left the platform, had not reached flying speed, but attained it by skillfully utilizing the height above water of 37 feet. 2 months later, January 18th, 1911, Eli successfully landed on a platform 120 foot long and 32 foot wide, built at a slope of 2.5 degrees over the quarterdeck of United States cruiser Pennsylvania. 22 wires, 3 foot apart, each with 50-pound sandbags at either end, were stretched transversely across the platform and maintained at 12 inches above it by 2 longitudinal rails. A projection was fitted on the undercarriage to catch the wires and decelerate the machine. In landing, the aftermost 11 wires were passed over, but the remainder were engaged, and the airplane came to rest over the foremost, and 50 foot above the transverse canvas screen rigging at the forward end of the platform to catch the airplane in the event of the arresting wires failing to stop it. Give me a second. Where is it? Did he get out? Did he run? Because he'd like to come out quickly. Go on. Do that. How long he's out, we'll never know, but he's off to chase squirrels. Sorry about that. In landing, the aftermost 11 wires were passed over, but the remainder were engaged, and the airplane came to rest over the foremost and 50 foot above the transverse canvas screen, rigged at the forward end of the platform to catch the airplane in the event of the resting wires failing to stop it. 45 minutes after landing, Eli flew off the platform. Eli used an ordinary land machine fitted with 3 wheels. Its weight was 1,000 pounds and a flying speed about 35 miles per hour. Although the weather conditions on both occasions were favourable, the vessels were not underway. A serious advantage to the aviator. It had been intended that Birmingham should be steaming at 10 knots. And that was sourced from Sea Covered Wagons at Sea by Lieutenant Miller, United States Navy, Naval Institute Proceedings, November 1931. That's the good thing about this book. It has sources in it. It's lovely. Nice again. A single torpedo doomed Prince of Wales and Bismarck. A single torpedo damaged Prince of Wales. It didn't doom it. Well, it damaged it. But if it hadn't been for the other aircraft coming in to attack it, it wouldn't have sunk it. And same with Bismarck. A single torpedo hits it, that causes it to circle, but that doesn't sink it. It's what turns up later. So yes, a single torpedo can do damage. A single torpedo, if it hits in the right spot, can cause trouble. That is true. But, you know, it has to actually get there. And has to actually get to where it's supposed to go. I know, belt and suspenders, method of rest of gear and bearing. Yeah. Founders UFO. Gasoline would not pass health and safety in the 21st century. No, that was the famous point made by Top Gear team. And when they became the Grand Tour team. The details of the arrangement made for Eli's daring exploits have been given above since they obtained the gems of design of an aircraft carrier, the flying off deck forward, the landing on deck aft, and the arresting gear on the latter. All that was now required was a connection between the 2 platforms or decks for the easy passage of aircraft from aft to forward, together with shelters or hangars for the aircraft to be carried. It's not therefore surprising to read that in 1911 the enthusiastic aviator Admiral Mark Kerr, who wrote a pretty interesting book, The Navy in My Time, brought to the Admiralty a design for an aircraft carrier which, as might be expected, embodied those features. The weight and speed of Eli's airplane are also of interest when compared with those now used on ship, the weight of which is from 4 to 8 times and speed 4 to 5 times of this early example. In February 1911, 2 airplanes were offered to the Admiralty by Mr. now Sir F.K. Maclean. The offer was accepted, and 4 naval officers were appointed for a course of training in at the aerodrome, the Royal Aero Club at Eastchurch. In December 1911, the Commander Sampson, one of the 4, repeated Eli's exploit aboard the Birmingham by flight, and that is HMS Birmingham of 1911, flying off a sloping trackway built over the fort Barbette and deck of the battleship Africa. Oh no, yeah. On the Elo's exploit on the Birmingham, as in the US. There is the HMS Birmingham comes in later. That's the US Birmingham he's talking about. Flying off a solar track where built over fore and Barbette and the deck of the battleship Africa at the anchor on Nor. The aircraft used by him was a short biplane fitted with wheels to which buoyancy airbags had been fitted. In 1912, Commander Sampson flew off similar tracks fitted into the battleship in the battleships Hibernia and London when steaming at 10.5 to 12 knots. Landing on was not attempted. These early experiences showed plainly that if aircraft would be carried by the ordinary warships, the platforms actually taking off and landing would impose very serious restrictions on the main gun armament. And the seaplanes seemed the preferable type to employ, as they could take off a calm sea and alight on water when returning to the ship, or in the event of engine failure. The platforms might therefore be omitted. Sorry, Fluff requires to come back in now. Are you ever going to make up your mind about what you want to do? Oh, in you come. Yeah. Oh. Well, at least you're well behaved. You come in, you sit down. So, Mike, what in your opinion is the most pointless debate in naval history? For me, it's what sunk the Bismarck. Go land, Doc, keep the door open. I'm not keeping the door open because my sister is currently going around the garden with a hose, hosing things. In the nicest way, I've done enough painting work in here. I don't want it sprayed with water just yet. So, yeah, pointless debate in naval history. Oh, there are so many. Sinking the Bismarck is always a popular one, but I think it's to me, it tends to be actually more recent debates are more pointless than others because it's when people sit down and go, I wish this carrier, this ship we have in service right now had been built as this or that or the other thing. And sit there and go, well, A, we don't know what its career was going to be like and what its service and what things it would have actually needed. So we can't estimate whether that's a pointless decision or not. And B, often what they're talking about is a very subjective thing. Most debates, any debate which debates down, drops down to top trumps, is usually for me fairly pointless. Fairly pointless. You good boy. And talking about these earlier, bandanas we have for the dogs. Go around them and keep them cool. And that's another reason I've got a fridge coming out. I've got a fridge out here, so I can put it in there. I'll put some in there. And what sank the hood might be done. What's being a torpedo defense? What's your opinion on the Italian torpedo defense system on Littorius? It's interesting. It does seem to do quite well, but that's as long as the torpedo hits where it's supposed to be hitting, and that's one of the things you have to remember with torpedo defense. What are you designing your defense for during? Are you designing your defense to defend you while maneuvering or while in harbour? Federer, worst debate I've ever seen. Naval historian who said the Bismarck was the best battleship ever and no other ship could sink her but herself. In a nicest way, she wasn't even the best battleship of the Axis forces. She was A, not as good as the Littorios in my opinion, and B, definitely nowhere near the Yamato and Musashi. So yeah, that's not happening. And then there's these things called the Iowas, which would have been compared to what else would be if the other things had been built, they would have been potentially the battle cruiser, although they'd have been called fast battleship. To the other ships, to the other designs battleship, but there were lots of other options going on there. Oh, not again. Seriously. Okay. Report. Pornography. Okay. And hide user on this channel. That one was targeted and taken out by me. Lidor is best European access Navy battleship. Yeah. I was like to go, where do we pick up the scam? I do not know, but apparently I've reached the point where suddenly scammers are interested in me. I'm not sure why. I don't know what happened, but you know, that I have. Sometimes, in my defence, Mum's talking to me. In you know, Stafford. A, concentrate on your mum. B, was your mum talking to you about, goodness gracious me, where are these bots coming from? Because my mum is also messaging me on that front. But you see, the thing is, I have on most of the screen, 2/3 of the screen is the live chat from this. And a third of the screen is WhatsApp because my family communicate on that. I haven't managed to migrate them across to Discord yet. I'm trying to get my mum onto Discord because I think you'd love her in the. Seriously, my mum you would love on the server. I am trying to encourage her to join it just because I think you'd all find it quite interesting. My mum responding to things and you going, oh, that's where he gets that style from. Anyway, leaving that to one side, she's currently messaging me almost every few minutes going, why? Why are they doing this? Where are these bots coming from? How do I find these bots? How do I stop these bots? Actually, what about Vanguard instead of about other battleships? Yes, she was better than the Bismarck. Honestly, to be fair, the King George V, once they were organised, were better than the Bismarck. Although that's you then have to make the case of 14-inch versus 15-inch guns. People go, oh, Bismarck is 15-inch guns, so they're automatically better than the 14-inch guns. And you go, well, the Bismarck has 8 15-inch guns. The King George V have 10 14-inch guns, same rate of fire. Probably the British are actually ahead. Rate of fire, capabilities, da 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 da. And once you get into fire control, and then of course you have the whole instance which involves a little known thing called Scharnhorst and HMS Duke of York at the Battle of North Cape. Now, yes, Scharnhorst is an 11-inch armed battleship, which is not really a good position to be in. But you know, the fact that she gets splattered quite so much shows the value of that 14-inch gun. Alfred B2A, I really want to know where the myth that the German World War II ships were better than anything else afloat came from. Basically, it starts off with the army, of the German army, and then transcribes across to other bits of their force structure, and you sit there and go, "Why? Where did this idea come from? It's absurd." But also, Italians work naval weakness minus commanders. If ammunition quality control, at least in my understanding. Yes, their main naval weakness is once you give up is their quality control for ammunition. It's absolutely atrocious. And what's worse, as I keep pointing out in every video I've done on the Italian cruisers, is they knew about it. long before war happened, so they could have sorted it out a long time before war happened. Fantasy, how big is your screen? 42-inch 4K is recommended. I have no idea how big my screen is, which is terrible, but I've got two of these screens for when the tower is set up, which have been very nicely sent to me by subscribers. Hello, you. Behave. Oh, you want to get in the lap, do you? All right. Okay, you want to come and check on me because I sneezed. And you're worried if I sneeze. So, all right. But Highland, hello Highland. Don't think I've seen you before. How are you doing? What class of ship would you have liked to have seen made if certain treaties are not put stopped to, or under war stop the need for these ships to be made? UK versus USA versus Germany. Oh, I'd like to see the Maltas built because I think that would have been quite cool and they'd have been very interesting. I'd have liked to have seen the Germans actually, despite me thinking it's actually terrible design, I'd like to see what they'd have done if they'd actually got an aircraft carrying the service. I'd like, what they could have done. I'm sure dogs saying something. Hello, Glenn. For the USA, I'd like to see the Alaskas actually have a chance to hunt some service raiders. So if some of the next generation Panzer Chief had actually been built that were worthy of the title of Surface Raider and actually were worthy of that name and that role, then maybe they could have found something actually interesting to take on. I don't know. Is your mum chatting away in the chat? And if yes, can she sound off here? She's not on she's not on the chat. She's on the WhatsApp. I have told her to come along to the chat, but she hasn't done that yet. Polatsky, gun caliber is nice, but hitting things is also important. Hitting things is probably more important, but people forget that. But no, assuming, another question about Vanguard I just remembered. Did any other battleship have the same radar autogun tracking Vanguard did? I've never been able to find out. They fitted some very interesting things to the Iowa class. They weren't built with it necessarily from the beginning, as Vanguard was, but I think they did get something. I don't have. I think in this camera is not quite. That's the next. That's once I get a tower sorted out, then it's upgrade the camera and start doing 4K raw. Hello, you having a nice lie down there? Okay. Yeah, you're just happily getting Bane of Fuss off. Hi, Jack Ray. Hello. Shadows also, Porsche shows that after a puny 6-inch from HMS Belfast rips your radar, armor will save you armor will save your bacon, or verse for that matter. I won't save it. No, nothing saves your bacon once you completely outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. Oh, these parts of me are attached. Seriously, they're attached. Ow. They were attached. Oh. You have no comprehension of the pain. You don't. Ow. Oh. No. So, could you fit 50 guns on a brig? No. No, you couldn't. I'll start to go. If Germany had ordered 4 Yamato class ships from Japan to be built in Japanese yards and transported to Germany around Africa, could it have been done? Japan doesn't really have the yards to build that many. But if I look, if Germany orders them, I don't know, in 1936 or something, and Japan magically had the infrastructure to do it, they could maybe do it, but Japan would need a lot of infrastructure. And it would need to be a bigger. Honestly, it'll be easier for Japan to supply the guns and the designs, and Germany to build the ships. But they would also need to build to build sort of. They would also need to build their own infrastructure to actually do it as well. Ah. Again, that would be an impossible argument of port quality control versus deterioration of the guns in the Littorio class. Oh, it's the quality control is just atrocious. What would be a better system for torpedo defense for the Littorios? There isn't really one better for the Littorios because the Littorios have got a very good one. But if they had known more about the G3 system, they might well have gone for something like that, or something with some ideas of that towards it. Yes, Faunus UFO and Seneca Nero. I was asking, oh dear, my imagination just hurt. It's trying to look like no optional parts. Oh. After B228, if World War II had held off till 1945, what would different navies look like? Would the USN and RN have been as big as they were historically in 1945 or smaller? They wouldn't have been as big as they were historically in 1945, but would have definitely been a lot bigger than they were in 1939. The Brits and the Americans would have been well into their rearmament programs, and with their infrastructure construction and what they had going on, you would be looking at a very different services. So you'd probably be looking at. Sorry, I got distracted by Pavatsky's comment there. Yeah, go away. What they've done, probably you'd be looking at the Royal Navy, which would have a load of carriers, sort of like the indefatigable sort of this construction. You'd probably have the U.S. Navy would have the entire Essex swarm in service. Goodness knows what the Japanese would have actually managed to build. There's their plans for what they wanted to build, and there's their reality of what they could build, the infrastructure they had. That's the point. The British and Americans actually had the infrastructure to build their plans. The Germans, the Italians, and the Japanese didn't. They would have actually either had to build infrastructure, or they would have been completely wiped out by the numbers they'd have been facing. And also, this is going to sound strange, but you would be looking at a horde of things like Flower class and various corvettes the Royal Navy would have in service at the beginning, because they would have been building small ships to match the German submarine force from the get-go and overmatch it. Pavatsky, the comment that made me get distracted there. Are the parts required to hand out cookies? No. Boko Disraeli. Hello, Boko. In hindsight, would the 6-inch designs for the Atlantic class have made more sense for the USN? Well, no. The Atlantis are, of course, the 5-inch machine gun cruisers. And the 6-inch class cruiser, the 6-inch would have been useful, yes, because it would have given them firepower vis-a-vis other cruisers, but it wouldn't have helped them with their AA role, because the 5-inch gun was better. Hello, you've got as close to the biscuits as you physically can, haven't you? Well, you can say that looking at them. Would it have made a difference? Would it have been better? Probably not, actually. And obviously, the 5-inch guns made things a lot easier from a logistical perspective. But 6-inch Atlanta cruiser designs are really quite cool. Okay, so from a cool idea, maybe yes, they might have looked better, but from a logistical and operational need and actual requirement, the 5-inch is fine. So Earth is invaded by aliens. Best naval guns for anti-space leader land the duty. I'm brave prime. Of the guns available at the moment, you're probably talking about the 5-inch. That BAE builds is probably the best one. Although the Otto Malera 127mm is probably going to be pretty darn in demand. But we all know that realistically, what you want to get is the 16-inch guns of the Iowa class back and operating. New Agree 447. I still interested in borrowing those books from me. Yes, but can we put it off till after I've got this place back organised and I know where all my own books are? So anyway, I think AC4's main ship is a brig-rigged frigate. Did that happen? A brig-rigged frigate? Rarely. In fact, I can only think of one example where that was the case, and that was for an experiment and found not to be viable and not carried on. Because they usually preferred to make their frigates fully rigged, not just brig-rigged. Sorry, Mosquito, but I don't like you in my office. Right. Closing the windows to stop any more of these mozzies coming in. So we are now fully, first time working here with everything closed down since it's been painted. It's a nice mixture of colours. Instagram, Fluffy planning to install bed in the brew shed. That's the entire reason for these carpeted floors. I will need to get more, as said, but yes, the entire reason for them is to provide a massive floor space for the fluffs. That's right. Art school reject had to go to war in 1939 as ideology demanded it. No, he didn't. He honestly wasn't thinking he was going to war. He presumed he wasn't. He actually told the head of the Navy he didn't think he was going to war, so the head of the Navy went on holiday, and then war began. Thank you, Go-Go Lander. There's actually, you could fit a single 15-inch gun on a brig, but the brig disassembles spectacularly when you fired a gun. Yep. Then I assume maybe the Lions or Super Lions would exist. If the war holds off to 1945, probably the Lions definitely exist, and the Super Lions could well be under construction. I was asking, how good were the 145mm guns of the Capitani Romani class compared to the 5.2 5-inch guns? That's an interesting question. As I understand it, they were another scenario where it was the quality control which let them down. But they were certainly pretty good weapons and respected by the British. But they didn't have to fight them that often. Anok, World War II comes to 1945. Does the sequence go the same? Japan doesn't go to war until 1947. Who knows? As I said, if you were talking about January 1939, you'd think war was going to start with Japan first and then come to Europe. If you're looking at it in terms of 1945, how's the cookie crumbled? That's the honest question. How's the cookie crumbled? What is the firing angle of the 16-inch? Does it have the force to put a shot in orbit? Well, that's the main question, because it depends what angle you're dealing at with orbit. And Okay, to get a 16-inch up to the level to put a shell in orbit, none of the current guns could actually put a shell in orbit. However, the 16-inch is probably the best basis to build a gun if you're using modern technologies that you could develop a gun to put a shell in orbit. That was, of course, one of the advantages of the railgun, because theoretically you could make a railgun powerful enough to shoot at things in orbit using the gun, which is one of the reasons why they were so obsessed with it. Because to get into orbit and break the Earth's gravitational pull and get up is you need to go Mach 7 or 7 times the speed of sound. Now, it's rare shells actually go that fast, but you theoretically could get there. You need something at least to angle. Most 16-inch guns, most battleship guns can go up to 45, 40 to higher than 45 degrees, because 45 degrees is longer firing. So it's basically because they're going to fire, but they're going to be firing at that angle. If you've got them powerful enough, they can reach the escape velocity to go into orbit. Yeah, it's not going to be a quick development procedure, let's put it this way. Is that proper brew orange? Well, close enough for paint? I think so. Well, I guess we need the mosquito protection system for Windows. I am considering getting one of those electronic anti-mosquito things to stick up in here, because I think especially now it's orange. No. It's probably going to attract more of them. Speaking of that, sorry. So anyway, a 16-inch 100 gun was used to launch used as an orbital launch platform. That would work. That is not a good thing for you to chew up. That is the plastic stuff I use for the floor as sheeting to protect it from paint. Not sensible for a fluffy to chew, okay? Before anyone wonders what he's doing, he has made a den. Well, he had.
Water?
Someone has come to collect him. He does need water.
Other things to do, but Mum's worried about water.
He hasn't got water, so he does need that.
Situation. There's water in the garden.
Okay. But I was hoping not to open the door because all the mosquitoes keep coming in. Sorry, sisters. Neo Fosun, AI and brew slushy, good idea or not? It's an idea. It's actually quite nice. I've had it. The transfer is the railgun dead? Thought they were still working on it. The railgun is not dead. The railgun is still being worked on, and the trouble is, it just wasn't ready in time for the Zulmots. Well, for the arbitrary setting that people set for the Zulmots.
Where do you want this?
Put it on that slate.
There.
Thank you. Make sure the lights don't get caught. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, really, you need to grow a few inches.
No, there needs to be about 4 of them tonight.
Yes, there needs to be 4 of you. We should start cloning. Oh, I love winding up my sister. It's basically what Royals had to do. How many books did you have for tonight? Well, technically, I had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16 books. But I have to admit, as it is technically my dad's 88th birthday, if he'd been alive today, I wasn't, and I've been doing all this all day and feeling hot. I was kind of hoping there was going to be a lot of questions tonight because it's sort of easier. It's Freeman. Mosquito Lantern works incredibly well, and each refill pack will last 8 hours. It's enclosed flame, but as you are in there, I think it'll be okay. Yeah, I have actually, it's stupidly going to sound strange. I've got an electronic version, something like that, which is an electric thing, plug into a thing, which I actually use for my mum and my sister. I got it for them because they are quite so problematic if they get bitten. And I haven't got one for myself because I'm stupid like that. I know. I got you one. Yes, you've got one. I don't need yours. You need yours. Yours looks after you and your brother. Very kind of you to offer. You're a good boy. You're a very good fluff. Yeah, so you didn't take a bottle into B&Q to get a colour match. No, I didn't take a bottle into B&Q to get a colour match. Where is my can? There you go. Supreme Eggshell from Vintro Paint. And it's deep saffron, technically. But I looked everywhere for it, and in the end, the only place I could find a decent orange paint was Amazon. So Amazon was where I went. I did try other places. Oh Lord, there are some people I don't want to think about having been cloned. It's a fun thing to think about. There was a whole movie recently, not that long ago, about Stalin being cloned, I think, or a son, secret son, or a clone. I'm not sure which. Blizzard, have to say, the Railgun program has the best motto: Velocitas Erratico. That it does. Could a 16-inch gun hoist a shell to the edge of the atmosphere? If so, could you just put a plot of intercept and hoist the shell up there and use the energy of the ship running over the shell to kill? Pretty much, if you've got, a 16-inch 100 cal will do it. Parksy just got some mosquito nets with magnets or glue and Velcro from the window frame. Or is it not possible with UK windows? It could be, but it's honestly easy to do other things. Hello, you going full wolf on me? Oh, you going full wolf, right? Oh, that's how I deal with you going full wolf. isn't it? Yes. That's ideal. You're getting full wolf. Whoa. It's okay, it's running. Camera shy floppy researcher doesn't. Are you camera shy? No, you just like it to get from your best side. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Interesting. If you need one more question, more questions, here's one. LM class compared to LM Atomic class, which is better? Oh. Some that are certainly easier to mass produce, which gives them an advantage because of numbers. But I would say LLM as planned or as a built, because as planned, they're pretty good, decent all rounders. But as some of them are built, they become almost premier AA destroyers with their 4-inch guns for their particular period at the beginning of the war. So, ooh. Um, wow. Wow. You have no qualms at all about mistreating your papa, do you? Yeah, I would. If I was going to be in one in a fight, I'd prefer to be in LM, especially as built, as designed, probably, and as most of them are completed as. If I was going to be in command of a fleet, especially if I was in the Pacific, and I needed as many ships as I wanted, I'd probably want the LM Sumners. That's it. Why was Halsey sad when he heard how Kamano was sunk? Probably had better plans for how to sink it himself. Oh, Junior, Stalin did have some children. He had a son who was captured by the Nazis. He had other kids. He did have children. You should watch The Death of Stalin. It's hilarious, and I love how all the top Soviet generals have Scottish or Northern accents. Take care, Glenn. Say hi to Jack. Interesting. Didn't realise there was a difference like that on the LLMs. I need to look into them more than. Well, some of them had all 4-inch guns fitted, basically. They became 4-inch gun cruisers. And the reason was to give them the AA destroyer role. So anyway, how many ships be in the Caribbean in the 1710s and 1720s? Not enough that you'd be running into a ship every couple of seconds. Unless it was the same ship. How's that to go? The year is 1935 and your first Sea Lord. What ships do you have designed? I turn around to my third Sea Lord, Admiral Henderson, and go, here's a blank check. No, seriously, I would probably be going for... I would probably take the Nelson Rodney design and go, I want 16-inch guns, I want that shape and armor, and I want it to go 28 plus knots, and I want it tomorrow. I would probably also be turning around and going, you know, this whole idea we have of 21, 22, 23,000 ton carriers to fit within the treaty limits? I want them 27,000 tons every single one, standard displacement. We're building from now on, because especially if I have hindsight, but even if I don't, you know, nice as well, I'm building them as big as I can. I would also be having a very interesting conversation about a fleet oiler, a fast fleet oiler, and churning out as many of those as I could and having them designed so they could be rapidly converted to escort carriers. And then it would come to sort of the tribal class, and it'd be a case of we will get the 4.5 inch gun working for them. So we'll have 4.5 inch guns on all our destroyers and all our ships to standardize our logistics train, so we don't have to have 4.7 on 4 inch and 4.7. We can get rid of all the 4 inch and all the 4.7s, and we can change everything to 4.5s. I would have the C's definitely, and these changed over for turreted 4.5 inch mounts, so they become AA cruisers with 4.5 inch guns, and I'd have lots of those built, those converted. And sloops. Literally, I would have sloops being built up the wazoo. I would have every single sloop I could get. I would sit in front of the treasury and I would scream at them. I would go to the House of Lords and I would hold sit-in protest until they gave me enough money to build as many sloops as I wanted. And I would build them for the Royal Navy, the Royal Canadian Navy, the Royal Australian Navy, the Royal New Zealand Navy, the Royal Indian Navy, the Royal South African Navy, every single Commonwealth nation, every single Commonwealth Dominion, every single empire country I could justify having a navy would have a navy, and it would have sloops building for it. And they would all be turbine powered. They would all have ASDIC, and they would all have 4.5 inch guns in 2 twin mounts, and a load of other things as well. Hello, what are you? No. Don't know where you got that from, but you shouldn't have that, should you? There you go. I know, I'm cruel. I take all your toys off you. I was going to say, some of the other class were finished with, I don't think they were fitted with 4 twin 4-inch guns. 3 twin 4-inch guns, not 4. So, if you could go back to the Iron Noble, more of these, then follow this, then that, and those. What would you like? What would look like the RM 60s and 60s? What would they look like now? It would be a lot bigger, but it would have a lot more Type 23s built, starters. So that's the recent one. But I would have basically Bristols and Type 23s. I wouldn't have built the Type 45s. I'd have just kept building Bristols. And I've gone in nicest way. We need the Bristols, especially if we're going to have a air defense carrier. And I'd have probably modified the Invincible class design to my dad's sort of preference of about 5 to 10,000 more tons, depending on what I felt I could get away with. I'm saying, completely forgot about the lightning and others modified. Really am off today. First the guns, and now forgetting the changes in our arms. I think I'm going to stop asking things now. Case in point, I even get the destroyer I think of with the 4-inch guns from. I think I meant Legion, but I don't trust myself. It was Legion. Where do gearings fit in World War II destroyer rankings? What do you want to talk about in terms of World War II destroyer rankings? Because, as I said, I'm not the fan of top trumps. Top trumps is not me. But what do you want to do? Are you talking about destroyers in an anti-submarine warfare escort? Are you talking about destroyer as in a Pacific anti-submarine warfare escort or Atlantic and Mediterranean anti-submarine warfare escort? Are you talking as an attack destroyer using its torpedoes to attack surface ships in the Pacific or in the Atlantic or in the Mediterranean? Are you talking about... There's a whole range of scenarios and you have to think about it. And the thing is, no ship is ever going to be the best in all scenarios. That's the reality of it. Some are going to be stronger in some areas than others because the reality of building a ship is it's a 90% solution at best, usually a 70% solution in most scenarios. In that it's not the perfect ship for that scenario. It's not the top trump's best ship for that scenario. Because you're never going to build the best ship for that scenario. Because if you do build the best ship for that specific scenario, the odds are it's going to be an absolutely terrible ship for any other scenario. So you have to build something which is about a 70% in most scenarios and a 90% in the most likely scenarios to have a hope of actually covering the scenarios you're actually going to find the ship in. Guys, has the heat gone the dock? I don't think so. Yet. Although it is hot. And it is affecting occasionally the CPU on the. You have to remember, my laptop uses the CPU as its graphics card, pretty much, and I think sometimes it does overload it. I was like, they had 4 dual mounts. I was intending to have 2 mounts on it next to each other. Motion last built sitting on my to be built a shelf of shame. Let me just check it out. I know one design was, but I didn't think it was the L class. I thought it was the other ones. M and L class. Yeah, you're right, and I'm wrong. I thought it was the other class which were fitted up like that. Oh, they did the real weird thing with them. Oh, they fitted them end on, didn't they? Those ones. Yeah. I always get distracted by the picture of Legion and Lance. They're good destroyers, though, for that. I was thinking they were the ones which just got the simple conversion, and it was the other ones which got the quad, the 4 twins, but no. Oh. Oh, depends on UFO. Direct to fan device if you can. I would do, but it's as raised up and as tilted away so it can get air as much as possible. So anyway, would you make your sloops really slow or slow, i.e. throttling down pre-war? What do you think? Kind of why I asked about the Sonora vs. Daring and County, as the RCN on one hand had and was made to last from the time Daring matured till after the County was decommissioned, so it's an all-rounder. Yeah, and no. It's also to an extent the very different budgets between the RCN and the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy, even when it's in straitened circumstances, seems to get a better budget than the Royal Canadian Navy. Customers, what are your thoughts on the Ming Dynasty treasure ships? They're massive. And cool stuff to look up. There, Trotsky had the same problem on PC during summer. Had to keep the window open for ventilation and remove dust from the fan or radiator every week, although it started slowing down really bad. Yep. I used to do the same. So on top transits is too narrow a field. The old top 10 lists on military and TV history discovery channels were good to get people interested, but the longer the from documentaries, the better. But Okay, this way. Hello. How would the Forest Shermans have failed in the battles around Guadalcanal with Circa 42 radar fit? And how do their abilities stack up against late post-war RN designs? They would have been far better with the Circa 42 radar fit. They'd have been far better able to support it. They could have been interested. They could have been. The thing is, they have a good combination of firepower, maneuverability, but coming about when they do, they also have capabilities built into them. How do they stack up? Their abilities stack up against late war, post-war RN designs. If the I would say the scariest ships to have in the Guadalcanal fights would have been the Daring class destroyers. Mainly because whilst they don't have torpedoes to match still the Japanese torpedoes, they do have a good torpedo arm, but mostly they have those 4.5-inch guns, and the 4.5-inch guns the Brits have post World War II, which if they'd actually got with them in service prior to World War II, it's one of the things that if war had held off for another few years, they probably would have got them in service. The 4.5-inch guns were really phenomenally capable on those Darings. The 4.5-inch gun is a really, really capable unit. They do sell cooling stands for laptops with proper laptop and have a fan underneath to blow cooling air from the motherboard. They do. Usually, I use pieces of wood. So, all right, what is a naval procurement decision you can't defend? Cutting anything down to 2 units. The bare minimum should be 3 and preferably 4. So anytime you see someone cutting saying, we're going to have 2 of this to replace what we've had previously, they're basically saying we've gone for the war of choice doctrine where we're always going to choose when we go to war. 2 of something does not mean, the 2 of something is the bare minimum you need to usually have 1 available. Bare minimum. Bare minimum. And they should know better because, in the nicest way, to guarantee the capability of the SSBNs, you have 4. So if you know that there is to guarantee the minimum capability of 1 being available, i.e. a minimum 1, a capability of 1 minimum being available at sea operational at all times is 4, then how you cut down below below 3, I do not know. What are you doing? Okay, your fluffiness, what were you up to? You were up to something. I know you. You were. So you can either tell me, or you can try and pretend you're innocent. You're going for the you're innocent and gorgeous route. It works well. Right then, everyone. It's now 20 to 11 my time. So, I better get going because I have to put a certain fluff to bed and do 1 more coat of paint before I go to bed myself. So I'm going to say thank you very much to everyone for being here. Sorry I haven't done as many books, but it was honestly probably better for me to be just talking. And yeah, I will do this. I will do these books again. I'll do it as a Transactions of the Institution of Naval Architects series and go through them there. Am I going to 11 o'clock? Probably not. Probably I will say thank you very much and I will take last questions now. Any news on the Type 83 article with Dr. Clarke? No, we're 2 perfectionists trying to get it right. Anok, can't defend having an LCS competition but ordering both into production. Oh, you can defend that because that's multiplicity of production lines and ensuring viability of yards for future needs in the event of a need requiring a major build-up. There you go. That's defended that decision. because you're in the nicest way. You can say, yes, we should have just had one ship, but in a nice way, having two. Think about the infrastructure that two production lines sustains. Thank you, Tashivu Fashal. Thank you, Albert Zaski. Thank you, George Newman. Thank you, Knights of Coach 1. Thank you, Mathemagics. Thank you, TG40. Thank you, Fenders UFO. The shed is shaping up well, sir. Thank you. Taking time, but it's getting there good. Thank you, Niaka4472. Thank you, Matthias Slavic. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, Stafford. Thank you, Colin Cameron. Thank you, Nancy Everyone. Won't the heat make it difficult to record videos? It will be interesting. We'll see. Hopefully, the only video I've got to record in probably the heated period is going to be the video on the cruisers, on the Kirovs. So we'll see. Take care, John Sykes. Take care, Yickers. Thank you, Jack Ray. Thank you, Anuk. And thank you, everyone. Take care. And, well, have a nice evening. Thank you. Good luck with the MA thesis, Veterans Evening. Take care, Carl Wheelersberg. Thank you, Grace Husky. Thank you, Jay Elliott. Thank you, Bogut Israeli. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Jack Ray, Yickers, John Sykes. Anuk. I think I've said everyone. Thank you all. And you're going to say thank you? Oh, you are. Hello. Thank you, everyone. This is my best side. Thank you. Thank you, Tanner. Take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you, Constant Drowsiness. Chris Orion, thank you. Thank you, Tanya Thurker. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Walt92. Thank you, Steph Thompson. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the super chats and the support. It really does make the difference. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Yes, you'll get your biscuit. Don't worry. Thank you. Take care. Bye.